Send it to you real quick.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this lovely late spring day, soon to be summer. This is the Electoral Area Services Committee, our meeting for Monday, June 17th, 2024. A little bit of housekeeping. In event of an emergency, there are exits on the south side as well as the north side of the building and where you came in. If anybody need to use washrooms, the washrooms are located around the corner and in the back here. If there was any kind of emergency, the muster point is out in the parking lot out front here, so we would assemble there. Hopefully we don't have to invoke that at any point in time. This meeting is not meant for the general public input. If members of the public wish to speak at a meeting, they should contact CVRD Legislative Service Department and request to appear as a delegation. Live webcasts and recordings are available at the Comox Valley, www.comoxvalleyrd.ca minutes/agenda. So we're going to move on into the public meeting. First of all, let me say that it's always an honor to do the acknowledgement and to bear the fact that we are holding our meeting today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nations. We have today the RCP quarterly update and policing priorities report. We have Staff Sergeant Corey Kilborn, correct? And Sergeant Rob? No, you're the stand-in, are you?
Yeah, Staff Sergeant Corey.
Thanks. Okay, I'll turn you on here. You got your lights, so thank you very much for coming. And we moved receipt, so please fire away. Oh, that's the wrong word.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I can also add that our new detachment commander, Inspector Scott Mercer, will be here in the first week of July. And so we'll have him out for a transition at some point, but at the next quarterly reports. So we don't have the reference here to go off, so we'll provide this report verbally. Where we can provide numbers and percentages, we'll do that because a lot of times a percentage equates to a number that may or may not be kind of significant. We'll try to provide some context where we can. Generally, for calls of service in the fourth quarter of the year, we're up 4% on calls for service, which actually translates to 23 extra calls for service. For a bit of context, we're generally in the entire detachment area, we're flat in calls for service for the whole area. As far as the most common call types that we have, it's traffic fairly overwhelmingly with 29%, following by the Chuck well-being. One of the questions we get is in terms of the Chuck well-being requests is this could be anything from a mental health check-in to someone reporting they can't get a hold of their elderly grandparent, not answering their phone. And so it can be more of a medical call for service. So this is quite a wide-ranging call for service, and this is consistent with all of the areas that we serve in terms of a high amount of call volume. In terms of the most common call locations, we've got up at the top of the list is the Cumberland area, Black Creek, Merville, and with Fanny Bay, Union Bay, Royston kind of rounding out the bottom and then the islands as well. One of the concerns for the detachment ongoing is, in addition to the traffic, is the violent crime. And so we continue to track the violent offenders in our area via a provincial program called the Repeat Violent Offenders Initiative. And so what that means is we have identified repeat violent offenders in our area. Some of them would reside in the regional districts area. And so in terms of attention from the police, there's a little more detailed attention. And then it's a holistic approach in terms of they get a little more attention from Crown Council and the corrections as well. So in order to, I think, stem the tide of some of the repeat violent offenses we've seen. And in terms of the types of violent crime, the most common type of violent crime in the CVRD was assault. And the majority of the assault files are occurring in the Cumberland and Black Creek and Union Bay areas. And in terms of numbers, we're looking at 27, which is actually a 42% change from 22-23. And so the 42% is large, but it translates to 8 incidents, followed by utter threats, harassment, and sexual offenses and extortion. Normally with the extortion, it's a rising problem we're seeing right now in all jurisdictions. And a lot of it is the, to use the term, sextortion or romance scams that occur. And so we're seeing a lot of that in all areas of the community, from kids using their phones to elderly people as well, being lured from afar and sending money to people purporting to be, someone else. And then when we look at the map of the violent crime, again, that's the same order. It's Cumberland, Black Creek, Union Bay, and Myrtle. Property crime is another huge issue in the area all around. And I think the numbers that we have in terms of property crime they're flat to slightly down. However, when you look at the BC in general, they're way down. And I think this is just a function of the offenders in a certain age group. Obviously, demographics are shifting older. And so that's a part of the decreases. But when we are decreasing less than most other places, then that's a concern to the police here in town, obviously. And I think in terms of the number of files, when you look at the effect that it has on someone, if your car is broken into, you could be looking at hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars to replace property or damage to your vehicle. It's a huge effect on a personal level for people. So we take the property crime very seriously. In terms of numbers, we're seeing a lot of mischief to property, theft from vehicles, frauds, and then other theft comprises the vast majority of the property crime. And so we have a unit in our detachment that targets the prolific offenders in the area. And we've also had some multi-jurisdictional property offenders that are doing some of the large scale break and enters in town. We've had really good success in targeting them and arresting them and charging them. And typically those multi-jurisdictional offenders will affect mostly the CVRD areas because it's larger commercial style break and enters and theft of large equipment and things like that. And so in terms of the property crime, again, it's, a lot of it has to do with density with the statistics. So Cumberland has the highest number of property crime files as well. In terms of drug trafficking, CDSA offenses, this is an area that we're continually evolving, I guess, in line with the provincial guidelines on decriminalization and the subsequent recriminalization that we've seen in the last month or so. And so I don't think a whole lot has changed in terms of trafficking activity. It's still high. We have never really targeted the users in terms of our enforcement. And so our focus still is on the sort of those mid-level traffickers that we can impact. And so we have a bunch of initiatives that we employ to target that end of things. And then from a user perspective, we continue to try to divert people to treatment and other supports. But at the end of the day, we're at the end of the line of the system. So, we kind of inherit some of the health issues on that front, but we do what we can. Traffic offenses tend to be the areas that we police #1 concern. And I can report it's still a large concern, even though it's showing an 8% drop in impaired offenses. It's still a very high concern for us. And we have, as part of our detachment, a member of Alexa's team, which is awarded to a member who performs a significant amount of impaired driving work. And it's a high number of impaired driving offenses. And so we do conduct our still road checks and a lot of impaired driving enforcement, as well as for the drug driving as well. There's a number of members that are trained in detection of that in our detachment as well. So that's the statistical portion of the presentation. In terms of priorities for the detachment, in consultation with all the communities, I foreshadowed a lot of the areas of concern there, and traffic tends to be the number one concern for most communities, and in terms of violent crime as well. So what we've done in Troy's crew, we've developed basically action plans for the members in the detachment to target each of these priorities. And so we have sort of specific and measurable items that we can report on every quarter internally to ensure that we're sort of working to target those priorities. Anything to add on that point, Troy?
No, so we've met with all the communities, sort of in our jurisdiction, and met with, to establish what the overreaching priorities are. And then in consultation and what our measures and initiatives would be for those. And the initiatives are sort of generated in with our members as well, on what they can do with sort of the boots on the ground to meet the goals of the community. So could be a specific number of check stops per year, offenders that are on curfews, checking them. You know, we've got all those listed out and be part of the annual performance plan for the regional district.
Yeah, and each community will be a little bit different in terms of specifics under each priority. For instance, we received the Parks and Party Patrol funding arrangement plan from the regional district, and it identifies a number of places that are specific to the regional district in terms of concerns, and every community will have their specific areas. So we're able to target a wide net with still addressing each community's specific needs. Oh, any questions?
There's your cue. Directors, question, Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for coming. Always appreciate it. Last week I was thinking about the RCMP and counting our blessings in Canada, to be honest. In the Mexican election, I think 36 local politicians were murdered in the last election a couple of weeks ago, and that's not the problem we have here. We still have a pretty functioning society, but I think when you talk about some of those stats increasing with the cost of living crisis that we have, that's putting pressure on low-income households, on mid-income households, and I think it's difficult at a number of levels for a lot of our residents. So I appreciate that you are getting involved with that, and in regards to your comments around the priorities, yeah, we haven't changed them that much. I would say I'm highly supportive of you targeting mid-level and the dealers, those who profit from the fentanyl deaths right now. Like, go to them with all your might. And I know it's like trying to plug a leak, a pretty major leak, but at the same time, that's the job we need to do. And I appreciate that the users are given a bit more leeway, because a lot of them struggles with different issues in their lives that can be quite difficult, right? So, and for the traffic priorities, yeah, it was good. We talked a bit about the islands when you came a couple of weeks ago, and I also want to show appreciation for sometimes when we have encampments in the rural areas. And I know, and what I'll highlight is I really appreciate when the RCMP work with some of our nonprofit groups and others. We always love to see those collaboration, because you know you got different approaches in each organization, and I think the combination of them all is usually what leads to really good results. So I know I've been aware of a few instances of family violence, and I think those integrated kind of approach to those problems is what works best. So yeah, so I don't have anything new today. I think it's good to get a quarterly update, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Director Hardy.
Yeah, not too much to add, other than thank you again to the local RCMP for the work that you do for our community and keeping us safe. I know quite often we don't say thanks to the people that protect us. So I just wanted to again shout out and say thank you very much for your hard work for our community. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. I'll pass it on to our members.
I say ditto to that. When you mentioned the fact of the extortion and over the internet, and I think the job's going to get harder and harder as we move into the AI world. A friend of mine got a distress call from his daughter. It was his daughter's voice, and she was hysteric. She'd been in a car accident, and she was going to go to jail, and she needed money, and he's going, well, where's the baby? And of course, he didn't answer because it wasn't intelligent enough to actually answer a question, and it was just going on. And he thought, my daughter never loses control. She's always, what do you want money for? You and Dan have more money than Mom and I, you know. So anyway, it was his wife that finally figured it out. And it turned out later on, yes, that his daughter's phone had been hacked, and they stole just enough information to make it sound like it was her in some kind of stressful situation. So I mean, it's a little different than somebody phoning grandma for money and kind of winging it. These guys are like, I guess it's just tip of the iceberg what we can look forward to. So I don't envy your job as the future rolls out with artificial intelligence.
And that is part of the, in the initiatives plan is to have like our client services members be involved with those sort of public service announcements and getting that information out there. And especially with youth in schools about, electronics and the issues it can cause, right? Social media side of it, but definitely education is a key component of that for sure. And that's our plan.
It triggered a question from Director Robert.
Yeah, you did, because a couple of weeks ago, there was a comment from someone in Ottawa, maybe RCMP otherwise, and I don't know if you got it, but it was a comment that basically in Canada, like, we are not equipped at all to fight cybercrime. Like, you're on your own. That was a message I got, and it was
Very difficult.
Yeah, so in that context, when you can't do something on the regulatory or enforcement side, I always go to education. That's a cheap way, and I think if as a society we invest more in that education and for people to be on the lookout, I don't think we've done any kind of massive effort. I think there's still a lot of people that are totally caught, as Dr. Grief said, like caught unaware and don't know the tricks. So maybe it's not a local government, but maybe when we talk to province and the federal, we can suggest way more education if we're not gonna tackle it online with the resources we have.
And I think the reality is that, the money is sent somewhere, and depending on the country where it goes, we have no ability to track it. And so there's no ability to hold the offenders accountable. And, the technology is far outpacing the ethical considerations and implications, has been for a while, I think. So we're always in a struggle to catch up to the current trends.
Well, once again, thank you guys so much for coming and giving us an update. We've loaded up your PowerPoint so we can peruse it later. And once again, so thank you very much, and go out there and do the good work that you do.
Yep, thanks again. And if there's any questions as a result, just forward it to us offline and we'll do our best to answer.
Thank you. So on receipt, anyone opposed? That carries. Now, we have a delegation next up. Andrew Rice and Dave Proctor to present information regarding their support for installation of the cell tower at Eleanor Road. Welcome, gents.
There you go. Thanks for having us today. Oh, there we go.
Now you're on.
I should probably I should speak a little quieter. Thanks very much for having us today. My name is Andrew Rice. I was born and raised in the Comox Valley. This is where I choose to live, work, and play. I'm here to discuss support for the cell phone tower being proposed on Eleanor Road and other tower proposals that have been recently brought to council or could be in the future. How many people here own a cell phone? Everybody here probably has cell phones, I would imagine. How many people use that cell phone to contact family, use it for emergency things, to use it in their daily lives? And that's the big thing I'm here to talk about today. The other question I have too is how many people have a landline at their residence? Why would you need one? If you live in a reasonably populated area with reasonable amenities and a cell phone plan is accessible to anyone that wants one. Over the last few years, the population of the Comox Valley has grown considerably. And with that, so is the amount of people that use a cell phone as their primary form of communication. I live in a populated area of the Comox Valley off Lurwick and East Courtney. I have very poor service at my home, and so do members of my family, all of us with different carriers. And hey, I'm not talking about YouTube or looking at Facebook or surfing the internet. I can use Wi-Fi for that. I'm talking about making phone calls. And I actually work 70% of the time from home. Another 30% of the time that I work is on the road. And there are many areas in the Comox Valley with inadequate service to make phone calls. And I could actually probably draw them a map for you. And it's quite amazing the lack of cell phone coverage we have in some parts of the Comox Valley. Cell phone towers have a load capacity or the number of devices or bandwidth it can handle. And the number of towers provide adequate coverage is currently lacking. The tower coverage was adequate at one time, but has now reached full capacity and additional towers are needed to spread the load on the network and provide more coverage to more areas. The cell phone tower that's nearest to my home is located at the hospital at the main transmission tower off Mission Road. This tower is one that services the areas of East Courtney, North Courtney, majority of the Comox Peninsula, north, and to as far as Coleman Road. It provides service to growing areas of the population, also such as the bottom of Ryan Road Hill. The tower proposed at Eleanor Road will not alleviate the problems of poor coverage in all the areas I mentioned, but will help balance the load with coverage for the Comox Peninsula, East Courtney, and the surrounding areas, all currently with poor coverage. This location is not one that interferes with anyone's line of sight. It's in a lesser populated area, will not take up space for future housing. Dave Proctor has offered his property for this use and has no concern about his or neighboring property values being affected. A couple of things I just wanted to bring up too in my own life. I have a friend that lives in Valley View. Valley View, of course, is not in the Comox Valley Regional District and is not affected necessarily by being in an outlying area. She has 2 children and she's at home by herself most of the time throughout the day. Her children are under the age of 4. One of them fell in the driveway on his bike and knocked out his teeth and passed out. My friend, as she had his toddler at home, she called 911 for help. As she was actually unable to connect as her cell phone coverage was too poor for her to make a phone call. This is real stuff. I have an elderly client that lives near Quality Foods in Comox. And just a week ago, she was walking back from the grocery store and twisted her ankle. She was unable to call her husband for help and ended up dragging and walking herself home. She's actually currently waiting to hear back from the hospital on surgery scheduling. And she's actually missed phone calls from the hospital because she has poor cell phone service. We all have kids, we have elderly parents, we have friends, we have neighbors. We need connectivity for things like leaving a babysitter at the home, deliveries, make emergency phone calls, connect to others. We also have the needs of business and commerce. The CVRD supports the growing need for infrastructure, including the recent water and sewer projects, waste management, and I feel that it's not right that there's opposition for this tower. And this is one of the basic needs that we have in the Comox Valley. There's a very small population of the Comox Valley that is opposing this tower, and those people do not speak for the general population. I understand too that there is some question about the Little River fish hatchery and stream habitat and wild fish stocks being affected by the location of the cell phone tower. I'm a member of that hatchery, spent some time volunteering there, and I have confirmed and can assure you there's no concern for the Department of Fisheries or Oceans or the members of the hatchery regarding the placement of this tower. Also, did you know the Comox Valley Regional District has cell phone towers owned by Freedom Mobile on 2 of their water towers in the Comox Valley? Some of these are in higher populated areas, including West Courtney and near the Comox Hospital, and those were installed with very little public consultation. Also, the Comox Valley Regional District has a proprietary communication system to manage and monitor the systems and infrastructure, and that network is using technology that has estimated higher perceived risk to people than cell phone towers do today in this part of the world. That's it for me. Maybe I'll let Dave speak here too, and then you guys can ask questions if you like.
Thank you for having me, listening to me today. I'm the owner of 1388 Eleanor Road. And for the last 46 years, I've been a realtor until I semi-retired back at the end of this year. We live on the property. We've lived there for 4 years, and safety is a big concern for me and my health and my family and the people around. A lot of the neighbors I know and I enjoy, and I've had only one that I've heard that's been against the tower going there. My big concern, my property is divided by Little River. I cannot get I cannot get a cell phone to work. And I offer. If you want to come to my farm and drive down and see what I mean, you'll find out. I have a Christmas tree farm. We have 12,000 trees. We're hoping to get it up to about 17,000 trees when we're finished. And we have 8 acres on the south side of the river that's cultivated and ready for planting this fall. The problem is the minute I cross the river, I have no cell coverage, and it's a safety issue. I'm 67. I'd like to think I'm going to farm for the next 30 years. But I need the safety concern as I age to know that I can call for help if something happens. I flipped my tractor last year, pretty close to flipping it, and it gave me a scare to me because my land was a stump ranch when I bought it, and it was full of potholes from the trees coming out. And unbeknownst to me, I'm a little bit more careful now, but it could have been a disaster. And right now, if you drive down the Ryan Road and you get halfway down Ryan Road all the way to Thrifty Foods on the south side of the Lerwick, it's a dead zone. And if you notice, there's a lot of apartments that have just gone up there. Canada's going through an explosion of population, which is great to see. But at the same time, the people moving here are not moving from they're coming in from outside of the area from different communities. Most of them use a cell as their way of communication. We're building a house on the farm right now, and we don't even have to put phone lines in. Not that at any point, because we can't get a carrier to get to us. We're dependent on a cell tower to give us coverage. So I guess what I can't understand is with all the population growing and with the need for cell towers, you need cell towers to give people the service. Otherwise, you're going to find people having health and safety issues that are going to crop up around. 10 years ago, I took a bike ride, a tour through the Sahara Desert on a motorbike. And what came evident when I did that bike ride, and this was 10 years ago, going through the middle of the Sahara Desert, I had perfect cell coverage every inch of the way. Yet around our community, we don't have it. And it is a safety. My big thing is it's a safety issue. And like I say, I haven't had any of my neighbors ranting on me. The only people that's been ranting on me is a group that's threatened me with taking me to court if I allow a cell tower to go up. And other than that, I wouldn't be putting it up if I was thinking I'm going to be the closest person to it, where our new house is going to be. And TELUS is being quite accommodating and pushing the tower to the very back of the property where there's a stand of trees that it's going to be virtually invisible where it's going to go up. The only person that's going to see it is really me when I cross the river. But anyway, that's my talk on it. To me, it's for the safety of me driving a tractor at 67 years old. I would like to think that I have something on the side of my pocket that I can call for help if I need it. Thank you.
Thank you, David and Andrew. Any questions from the directors? Nope, seems good to me. I think what a lot of people too don't realize is we're again talk about burgeoning electronic technology. We're probably just poised on the beginning of direct low Earth orbit cell phone distribution, which means that nobody can run and escape from the electromagnetic energy, not just around a cell tower. So we're heading into a totally different world again. Dave?
One fact I thought I would share with you, just came to my head. Right now in this building where you're located, you are closer to a cell tower. The cell tower to this building is sitting on top of the old Nanaimo Realty building, the corner 6th and Duncan, 6th in England. There's a cell tower on that. That is closer to your employees, all you here right now, than what that cell tower will be to the neighboring people around it.
Awesome. Okay, thanks very much.
Anything else? Any other comments? Well, thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
And point taken. We'll be deliberating that a little later on in the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. Barreling on through the resolution status report for receipt. And seconded. Any discussion on the resolution status report? Seeing nothing, anybody opposed? That carries. A couple of reports, the Advisory Planning Commission minutes for Area A for receipt. Move a second on receipt. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, anyone opposed to receipt? That carries. And on to a development permit, DP 9A 24, Kensington Union Bay Properties, nominee limited, Union Bay Estates, a report for receipt. With a second on receipt and over to the CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the directors. Jody McLean, our Senior Planner of Development, will be introducing the staff report and supported by Tom True, our Manager of Planning Services, and the rest of your staff as well, Mr. Chair. So Jody, over to you.
Thank you. Through the CEO to the chair and directors. So this is an application for a development permit under the Kensington Comprehensive Guidelines, Section 87 on your official community plan. So this latest proposal would see a portable wastewater treatment plant be sited in that area illustrated in the map there between Washer Road and the railway. Now down on page 47 of your package, there is, as illustrated there, a site plan. The development would consist of a gravel driveway terminating at a fenced compound in which a treatment plant would be sited on a concrete pad. The structures would consist of 6 steel containers to house equipment and an office trailer and 8 above ground steel tanks and light poles on each of the 4 corners of the fenced area. The structures are all pre-manufactured, so the applicant has limited ability to alter the form and character of the structures themselves. The draft development permit in Appendix B of your package accepts this and fulfills the objectives of the guidelines by including conditions that the lights be dark sky friendly certified, and that the area between the treatment plant and the Washer Road, that area be maintained with forest cover for as long as that treatment plant is located there. Mr. Chair, so note that this only addresses the placement of the buildings within the development permit area. It does not address discharge to the environment, which is wholly regulated by the province, and the owners are required to have that provincial approval before they could operate this plant. Staff is recommending issuance of the development permit as drafted for the purposes of siting the buildings there. On behalf of the applicants, the agents overseeing this application are in attendance and are able to provide more information. It's Olu Ogunlai in person here, and I think there might be somebody online.
Do we have a agent for the proponent? Do you want to present? Do you want to step up to the podium? Just press the little green button there and or the little black button, I guess, a gray button, not the black one. You got it. There you go. You're on the air. Thank you.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of our applicant. And as Jody mentioned, we're applying for a DP to be able to put a temporary waste management plant on the site. The project is a Union Bay Estate, which is going to provide over 2,000 dwelling units. And this component is very important for us to facilitate the process. And as recommended by the team, we look to the council verbal voting for this application. We've looked at all the requirements of the CBRD, and we've made sure that it meets our bylaw, and process is ongoing to get the required approval from the province. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the directors? Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks for coming in person and for the report. This is the kind of proposal that I think typically, especially because it's so consequential to the future in Union Bay, is this kind of proposal that should definitely go to our APC first for consideration. Quite often when we have development permits, we get that first perspective from our APC. That's why we have them. So definitely I would like to take that route to kick it to our APC for some good advice from our community members on this. I do want to speak about how a proposal like that is contextualized and received in the communities. I think it raises more questions around the word temporary, and there's a lot of concerns. And I think the public knows that we've been working with Comox First Nation and Union Bay Estates and the community with the South Sewer Liquid Waste Management Plan towards the ultimate solution. But this proposal comes before us without any details around that broader picture. And I think it makes it very hard for the community to understand where that comes from and why it's here today. I think that's some of the things we might hear at the APC, but I would also say that, it's a limited role as well for development permits in terms of, like, as staff said in option 3, if we flatly denied it, it has to be grounded in the guidelines. We can't just ground it because we don't like it. What we're doing at this board is to confirm essentially that the development permit is aligned with our guidelines, which really relate to form and character. It does not talk about that broader picture of that temporary nature. So that's why I think it's going to be, taking that extra time to get our community members to look at the development guidelines. We've had some excellent feedback in the past that has improved projects. We got this proposal on Thursday or Friday at this board, so I'm not, I 2 days over the weekend, I don't have time. But I think if we take the time to kick it to the APC, then it can come back to this committee. That'll get us some time to get some good eyes on it. So I appreciate the work. I appreciate the intent. I happen to understand how that's the goal that's trying to be achieved, but at the same time, I think taking our time to really look at this and also continue to work and hopefully come back to the community with that broader context will be excessively important so people understand where all this is heading. I'll pass it to staff if they want to make more comments, or to my colleagues.
Thank you, Director.
Thanks, Director. And certainly if Ton or Jody want to weigh in, but as noted in the staff report, one of the options is to refer it to the Advisory Planning Commission. So that's certainly within the EA Electoral Area Services Committee's purview or responsibility. Ton?
Through the chair to the directors, staff can present this and a letter or memo to their next APC to allow them to discuss. And after that, we will summarize the comments and bring it back to the next ESC meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if I may add, in response to the question asked, I mean, this application and the temporary waste management plan is temporary because it's being prefabricated, and then it has already been in consultation with the city. There's already the intention that it shall be removed after a number of years, and that was already agreed in the previous master agreement. So there is.
Point of order, please.
Yeah, so it has been already agreed that it's going to be temporary. So there's that agreement already. So he's already sure, and we're aware of the plans to extend this sewage to that area, which is in the pipeline as well. So our client does not intend to leave it there indefinitely. And surely, because of other developments that will be coming on around that area, there's no way it can be left there indefinitely. So, I mean, there's that assurance that it's going to be a temporary facility.
Director Harper?
I think on this latter points, I understand the spirit and the discussions, but I think you may want to have a touch base with staff around this, because from a community perspective, nobody's yet seen any of those agreements, and they're from my understanding, it's part of our larger conversations around how the project will unfold. So I don't want to contradict what you said, because I think I understand the intent. But in my opinion, we still have some work to do to get to that place where there is that certainty around all the different elements of the project. And including with Comox First Nation, including with the Sewage Commission, there's still a few unknowns. So I think what people are concerned is a facility that basically could get put in, but then not utilized if some of that bigger picture is not inserted. But again, on the development permit side, we're just looking at form and character, and I think you've done a good job in the report to give us all the information so that our members of the APC will be able to provide good comments and then come back to us. And rather than have my 2 days of giving you feedback, on the report, then we'll have a more detailed look at the entire proposal. But I do believe you've put all the ingredients in it and done a good job to outline the site plan and how you try to mitigate the impacts.
Thank you.
Well, I thank you for coming up and sharing this with us. I will excuse you from the podium now while we take a vote on receipt. So on receipt, anyone opposed to receipt? That carries, and I believe Director Arbor wants a deferral.
No, Chair, I will move that we refer this proposal to the area APC, and that if there is no currently scheduled APC in the near future, because I realize we just had one on June 3rd, that if we're able to schedule one in the near future, maybe Tom has some ideas, or yeah, we'll work with calendar. That's my motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second.
So it's being referred to area APC, first and seconded. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Number 3, telecom antenna system for 1388 Elna Road. Moving second on receipt and a presentation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dylan Thiessen, our Planner 1 Long Range, will be introducing the staff report and available for questions, supported by staff, of course. So Dylan.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that introduction, James. Through the CAO to the chair and the directors, staff have received a request for a letter of concurrence for a proposed telecommunication tower on the property at 1388 Eleanor Road in the Little River neighborhood. This application has come to the Electoral Area Services Committee before, about a year ago, at which the directors asked staff to follow up with other federal departments to better understand the role that they play in this process, particularly in relation to environmental protections. Staff received a response from Environment and Climate Change Canada, which noted that they are not actively involved in most telecommunications proposals unless required under the Federal Impact Assessments Act, but that this does not relieve the proponent of their obligations to respect all applicable acts and regulations around environmental protection. In response to the director's comments at that meeting, the proponent has also reached out to Comox First Nation, who advised that a cultural heritage investigation permit is not required for this area, and they retained a qualified environmental professional to provide an environmental assessment of the proposal. Based on this assessment, the proponent has relocated the proposed tower further south on the subject property and resent mail-out notification packages to properties within a 500-meter radius of that property, which is aligned with our board policy on telecommunications towers. Based on this mail-out for the newly proposed location, 9 comments were received, 6 were supportive, and 3 were in opposition. The new location also went back to the Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission and the APC for Area B, both of whom voted in support of the proposal, though the Ag APC noted that they would prefer a location closer to a lot line. Staff are recommending that a letter of concurrence be granted as a proponent consulted on both the original and revised locations per the board policy and have addressed all applicable bylaws and policies. I'll also note that we have Doug Anastas from TELUS Communications in attendance in person, and I believe he has a brief presentation if the directors would like to view that. Thank you.
Very good. Welcome, Doug. You got a presentation. We're easily entertained. You got it. Okay, I turn you on. There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Grieve. Thank you, directors. Very pleased to be here today. As Dylan had mentioned, I work for TELUS. My name is Doug Anastos. I work for the part of the organization that builds out the wireless network across BC. And I actually also have the pleasure of being a resident of the Comox Valley. I live in Courtenay. And so I've come to you, and I guess in both of those capacities, I certainly agree with everything that the previous delegation had mentioned, at least from my perspective as a resident in the Comox Valley. There's certainly some work to be done, and this is an important step forward, I think, to reliable communications for residents here. So just a few points. I'll try not to spend too much time on the presentation here. I would like to answer questions. Just wanted to run through, what we're, proposing, what the objective it is, what are the benefits of this, and then, just add a bit to the location and design. Also have some photos, which are, I think, useful just to understand what it may look like. Although I believe in this case, it won't be able to be seen by the public, the tower that is. And also wanted to touch a bit on, some coverage maps and what it would do for the area, essentially, and run through a bit of the consultation process and results. Dylan had already mentioned that. But ultimately, what TELUS is seeking is a resolution of land use concurrence from the committee, from the board, ultimately. And with that, we're in a position to proceed to the next step. So just a few points here. TELUS has been consulting with the community for the last couple of years on a tower in this area. It started off as a 40-meter tower on the subject property. We relocated based on an environmental review, and then actually are proposing a shorter height, and this is in close consultation with DND and Transport Canada. Of course, that's a key consideration given the location, proximity to the runway. The intent of this, and I really can't say it any better than the previous delegation, a lot of demand on the network in the community these days. The network is not working properly any longer. So you can, in many areas, you can see that very large tower up by the hospital there. I actually live in that area as well. And you can't make a call, which is frustrating. You can see the tower, it's big, it should be providing service. It's trying its best. It's at capacity, and the network is not working as a result. So there's two things going on here. The community of Little River does not have cell service in many areas, and so that's a coverage problem. But this proposal has the side benefit of relieving some congestion on that existing tower, the existing network there. We also always have this stat: 80% of 911 calls are made from a mobile device. It's true. I think it's important. Of course, there's stories behind that. We heard a few today. I myself in the Valley attended to an emergency situation yesterday, just last night. Was a bicycle accident. We made the call. We had the service. The ambulance came. Everything is okay. Could have not really gone that way, or at least it could have been a lot more complicated, and there's different types of emergencies. And, really in that kind of situation, I can tell you, just having experienced it last night, you just want your phone to work. You just want to be able to make that call and get the professionals there, to attend to that situation. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this here, but what I would like to note is that the location for the tower now is in the middle of a very large property, 80-acre property. And it's what I would define as very far away, relatively speaking, to a lot of the other work that TELUS does from community members, neighboring residences. This is not always the case. Quite often, actually, we do build towers directly in the middle of communities, which is where they're needed. So I think this is certainly a very, respectful siting for the area, and one that I think you will not see. Similar actually to the tower up on off of Bates Road, which I know you can drive right by and you would never notice that you can't see it. And also just wanted to note, coming out of the last time that we presented to the board, that I did meet with Chief and Council from Comox Nation and explain the proposal as well. And my understanding is they didn't have any further comments on this. So just wanted to note that. Here's the location here. It is, as I noted, the revised location further south, several hundred meters from the original location. And as you can see, it's very far set back from neighboring properties, residents, as I noted. And this is based on an environmental review. A QEP had recommended that we move to this location. So again, that came out of actually the last board meeting that we were here, a recommendation. So this is what we would call a monopole, 35-meter monopole, which is a slim design. TELUS also has other types of towers, self-support lattice towers and the like. This is, this type of a design does fit in with the environment a bit better. Again, though, I don't think actually will make a difference in this case because you won't see it anyway. I'd like to pause here. This is always a good slide just to show, visually what we're trying to achieve. Although I have to add some caveats to this because it only tells half the story. But, in the before photo there, what you can see is that a good portion of Little River does not have any cell service at all. I've certainly experienced this. There is a bit by the ferry because we have a dedicated small cell there, but apart from that, you don't pick up service again until you get closer to the airport. So certainly, when we're talking about CVRD and the benefit to Little River, it will be a major benefit in terms of reliability of cell coverage. And then again, and we can't visually represent this, but this site will certainly significantly alleviate capacity issues on the existing network, and that's closer to the community, East Courtney area, on the way, back up Ryan Road there. So not to be understated, even though you can't see it here, but certainly a lot of people in the valley will benefit from that service improvement and that capacity improvement. Dylan mentioned most of this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide. Certainly can answer any other questions that directors may have on the consultation process. It has been what I would refer to as very in-depth and detailed over the past couple of years. A typical consultation process for a cell tower will take about 6 months, and we've been at it for a few years. So I would say it's a very, very robust consultation process that we've engaged in with the community and the regional district. Again, Dylan had mentioned this. I won't pause on this other than to say that, it's actually quite unusual and noteworthy that not that many people commented, but most of the respondents were supportive, which with cell tower proposals is usually not the case. It's usually that people are supportive and don't come out. I mean, I talk to people all around town. There's certainly a lot of people that would like to see better cell service. They don't usually get engaged. So noteworthy that there was a majority of respondents that were supportive in this case. Finally, before I open this up to, be available to answer some questions, is that this is the language, the draft resolution that we would propose in terms of our request for land use concurrence. As we're federally regulated, that is what Innovation, Science, Economic Development Canada would like to see as an end to the public and local government consultation process, is that resolution of land use concurrence. And so that's what we're seeking today. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that directors may have.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions? Director Hardy has a question.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Question that I would have is based upon the concerns that I've heard from folks that are supportive of the tower being in the Little River area, is that there's poor cell service in the city of Courtney and the town of Comox. So I guess the question I would have is why not have another tower in the city of Courtney or the town of Comox instead of out towards Little River Ferry Terminal?
Mhm. Yes, thank you. And through the chair and, and so it's absolutely a good point. And we can't do everything with one installation. And so right now we have the plan really for the Comox Valley and in each site is in different stages of design and, and consultation, but really to fix the problems, we would need probably another 5 macro sites, and one would be located in Comox. We actually just recently received approval from the city of Courtney for a tower in Courtney as well. And then there'd be others as well that would be needed to really increase service to a state where you can use your phone reliably and not drop calls, like myself driving the kids to school, drop 2 calls on the way to school between my house. So, but in this area, we do need a tower here, and this is the right place for it to serve this area.
Yeah, thanks. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the city of Courtney has approved another location for another cell tower. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, just as a recent council meeting. Yeah.
Okay, so is that information put forward in the report that was provided to the Electoral Area Services Committee? I asked the question to the chair.
Dylan?
Thank you through the chair to the directors. Generally, I don't believe we would comment on planning or land use applications outside of our jurisdiction. At times, they may reach out to us for a referral, generally speaking, if it's very close to an electoral area, but we did not receive a referral from the city that I'm aware of.
Yeah, thanks. I guess one more comment or question would be, based upon the information in the presentation shared with us today, there was 9 people that basically responded back to tell us with regards to whether they were in favor of the tower or not. Out of a population of, I'm not quite sure what the population is of Area B. It's about 7,000 plus. So I guess with regards to when we start looking at percentages, I guess we need to take that into consideration with 67% of the people that were consulted or 67 people that responded back to tell us can be a little bit misleading, I would think, with regards to if there's a population of 7,000 plus in Area B and 9 people responded, 6 in favor of and 3 not in favor of. I guess like I said, my point is I find that a little bit misleading. I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Director. Director Arbor?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess when I was reviewing the report this weekend, it does look like our public engagement bar was met. So I think it's a matter of whether people show up on an issue, and quite often when people show up on an issue, it's because there's massive concerns, as we saw with some of the other locations. This one has been around our table for 2 or 3 years, and I think that we did see some changes. Not everybody might love it, but the location seems to be way more acceptable than some of the other locations that we saw, and I know that our presenter here would like us to just stick to land use concurrence, but like any political body or government, you try to round up the knowledge and understanding and the receptivity of residents to particular proposals, both from a land use and otherwise perspective. And I would point out that I forget the name of the organization at the federal level that looks after this, but I said that they don't discourage other comments than land use. So we have provided them from time to time. And I would also say that my longtime community of Hornby Island, where there's actually another cell tower proposals there right now, but there's alternative to cell service, and because we didn't put a tower a number of years ago, that brought a fiber optic project, and now the cell reception is not perfect on the island, but people are quite happy to almost call themselves a cell-free zone for now. not saying that applies to the whole Comox Valley, but I'm just saying, and as the chair said, I just got Starlink as well at my place. So there's new technologies, and when people have concerns, public concerns, we need to listen to them as well. In this particular instance, because I don't see a huge wave, there's been adjustment to the proposals, the process has been followed. I don't have reservations about moving this one forward.
Thanks very much. We've had some comments. Thanks, Doug, for bringing this forward, and I'll excuse you from the podium.
Thank
I'll
you.
take
My
a vote
pleasure.
on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? That carries. And recommendation? Moved and seconded? I'll second it. Any more discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. It will be recorded as such. Now, we move into Saratoga Area Plan Update. Report regarding, of course, the local area plan for Saratoga Settlement Node. This is a way to inch forward on a proposed development and sewer amenity for Saratoga Miracle Beach. And is Alana? Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Alana Mullally, our General Manager of Planning and Development Services, will provide a brief intro to the staff, fairly brief staff report, but big process to come before us. So Alana, turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, James. Through the CAO to the chair, we wanted just to bring you a very quick overview of our proposal for Saratoga local area planning process. Last meeting, we talked about embarking on this process over the months ahead, and we wanted to flag some of our key objectives. Ultimately, we're looking to, Brian has prepared a presentation, which is great. Thank you, Brian. The key objectives for the initiative are to assess the carrying capacity of the settlement node relative to servicing opportunities, rainwater management, and natural asset services, and conservation or restoration of some of the natural systems in the area. We're also seeking to identify climate-related risks and vulnerabilities and identify opportunities to build some climate change resiliency. And we're looking to identify growth management scenarios that are based on that carrying capacity, the financial tools, housing needs, and community values that are discerned through community engagement. And please note that these growth scenarios could be used as an input to a possible future liquid waste management planning process. So this outlined in purple, this delineates the node, the settlement node, and that little triangle in the center. That's an acquisition of the province through one of our property owners dedicated some of their land to as an extension to Miracle Beach. The staff report notes that community engagement is critical to local area planning work. And last week at the Saratoga and Miracle Beach Residents Association annual general meeting, we heard some keen interest in participation in a local area planning process, particularly in targeted engagement methods such as focus groups. So this method, for example, would be a good way to dig in with residents, the tourist commercial property owners, and the range of nonprofits and individuals who are working on habitat conservation and ecosystem restoration. Next steps for staff are to issue a request for proposals and award a contract this summer. And community engagement will begin in the fall. We'll look to bring a draft to the EASC in spring of 2025 and seek adoption in summer of 2025. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alana. Actually, Ton and Alana and Mark and myself were up at a Saratoga Miracle Beach Residents Association meeting last week. And this news was quite well received. As you can imagine, it's not quite as long lasting as the Union Bay ongoing, but basically, I think 96 was the first iteration of a development up there. And then 2006 was the sewer referendum, I believe, that was turned down. So this is perhaps a way to gather information from the community on what kind of a community they want to see in the future, because of course the future is always unfolding and we can't go backwards. So I do think that there's a chance that we can discuss things like liquid waste management plan going into the future. And if we can engage like Alana said, if we can engage the tourist commercial community, local businesses, residents, and of course the proponent who basically owns that very large stretch of greenery in between all the settlements, then possibly we can imagine a miracle. And Alana doesn't remember saying that, but I remember in a meeting that maybe it's just my ears because I am going deaf slowly, that Lana says something, but we can imagine a miracle. And I thought that's a good catchy one. Let's go with that. So whether or not you said it or not, I'm going to steal it. Thanks. So any discussion on this one from the other directors? Director Arbor.
That's a good one. I'm just wondering, sorry, I kind of gapped for just one second. When we might see the terms of reference of the topics that will be covered in the plan, will that come back to the ESC at some point? I might have missed that in your comments.
Through the CEO to the chair and the directors. I didn't say anything about terms of reference.
Okay.
So if that's something that the committee would like to see, then we can certainly look at bringing you some updates. I think generally the objectives that I flagged at the outset, that's sort of the focus. But yeah, if you have feedback of specific things that you'd like to see, then we'd appreciate hearing about them.
Yeah, I think the scope. It'd be nice to see a draft scope to be confirmed by the committee, because like when Dr. Grieve, like a local area plan could or may or may not include a liquid waste management plan for, like, you know what I mean? Like there's many things that could be included. And I'd just be curious to see what will get covered and what won't get covered, and whether the committee will have further input on that, or if we're happy to let staff and the community proceed with general terms. That's actually, I'll just leave it at the discretion of Dr. Grieve here.
Well, thank you, Director. I would like to see a very fulsome and an open process. As you can imagine, like any community, there's people of various opinions and political positions. So I do think that this is welcome in the community. It's been a challenge at times to get community involvement on some issues up there. So I do think that this is a good opportunity to stir the pot a little bit and get some interest going. So I wouldn't rule out anything. I don't think we're going with a predetermined outcome. We're just going to see what the vision is, what they imagine Saratoga Miracle Beach community could be in the future. Because I do think that after all these years and different iterations of a plan, that this is going to be the proper way forward. And who knows what's going to fall out of it in the end.
Yeah, just a further, like really big picture, because it's on the map. Has SRD ever considered, like, how does the area north of Oyster River factor in the Strathcona Regional District regional growth strategy? Do they have a regional growth strategy? So what I mean is, this is obviously an area of higher population located half an hour from Campbell River and half an hour from Courtenay. And so I'm just wondering if there's ever been consideration to have SRD participate for what is essentially what triggered that comment is when I made the comment there was no grocery store in that area, and then you corrected me there, and there's one on the SRD side, and I joked that I never crossed the bridge. 'Cause
And a clinic.
I don't go outside the Comox Valley, but I'm just
A
wondering
pizza.
if there's consideration to that.
A liquor store. If I may, I think Director Rice is watching very closely. You have to remember the last time they had a sewer referendum, it was still the Comox Strathcona Regional District, so there's no imaginary boundaries up there. So I imagine, I know that Director Rice is keenly interested in how this could affect some of the denser areas just slightly north of the Oyster River, because they're facing some of the same challenges. As I mentioned at our last meeting, when we did Bain Engineering did the failed septic system report there, that fully half of the 12 wells that we dug failed to meet or exceed provincial guidelines. So we know there's a problem along the foreshore. So whether or not that's the focus, I think, we keep it really broad. We talked about aging in place. We have all those things that, as far as what kind of housing we want, I think this board has made it very plain. It's not going to be a subdivision in the 1960s style. So it's going to be a little more than that. So I'm hoping that through this process that we can actually move the needle forward a little bit. Alana, do you have anything to add?
Sure, thank you. Through Chair Grieve to the directors. Yeah, it's important for us to consult with SRD staff and Director Rice. Not for the least reasons, because we share some critical services on the north side of the Oyster River: water, solid waste collection, transit, etc., or a transit turnaround. And so we'll reach out to staff early and understand how they might see being involved themselves, and certainly Director Rice and his constituents. We have, in respect to the existing OCP for Strathcona, Area D remains an area of low growth relative to the servicing, but we'll want to check in to make sure that that remains the vision of the Strathcona board, and also understand how they propose to respond to their own housing needs assessments.
Thank you very much. I think we're still on receipt. So on the report, all those in favor of receipt? That carries. And recommendation? There's no recommendation, I'm sorry. Not yet. Not that I'm chomping at the bit here. Okay, so right into the, do you want to take a quick break? We've been sitting down here for a while, so we're going to take a 7-8 minute break. On the draft agricultural plan, recommendations and next steps, the report June 11th, 2024 for receipt. Move a second on receipt and over to CEO for introductions.
Thank you, and pleased to introduce Lisa Kilpatrick, our Community Development and Resilience Manager. And I think Lisa's got a brief introduction, and then we'll be introducing the our consultant who's been helping us through this agricultural plan. So Lisa, over to you.
Good morning. Through the chair to the directors, it's an exciting day that we get to bring the draft recommendations for a new and updated ag plan to the committee. As you're aware, it's been a result of significant work and contribution from farmers, producers, processors, and those folks who intersect with the ag community over the last couple of years. This project began with phase one, and that was taking a look at the 2001 ag plan, evaluating it, recognizing what the strengths were and what areas needed to be updated and modernized. We also created an advisory committee that has been significantly contributing to the project throughout the whole entire process. And that advisory committee was made up of community members and producers and processors. We completed a background report that really looked at the history and state of the current economic state of the agricultural sector in our region. And then a series of over 30 one-on-one interviews were conducted with key informants. We then moved into phase two after hearing from the community that we needed to engage more. There was significant interest that we proceed with a way that the community felt that they were contributing to a plan that that would resonate with them and highlight their priorities moving into the future. We completed 8 workshops, online engagement, meetings with farm institutes and farmers market associations, and staff workshops. That resulted in a final interim report outlining the engagement to date and prioritized themes that we had heard from the community. That report was approved by EASC, and we move forward with the draft plan into phase 3. And that's where we are right now. The draft plan has been created. We have shared the draft plan with farmers institutes and the farmers market for feedback. And now we are coming to you with that draft plan. If you move forward with the endorsement of the draft plan, we'll move to final public comment, and then we'll move into the development of an implementation strategy over the next couple of months. That implementation strategy will look at regional and sub-regional jurisdictional and community partnership actions so that we can actualize the recommendations. So I'm going to move over to introducing Ione Smith. And you have had the pleasure of hearing Ione present in the past on these phases. And Ione is from Upland Agricultural Consulting, and she will present the draft recommendations.
Hold on, just the little gray button. I have to say, it's so nice to have you at our podium. Looking forward to this.
Thank you very much. As Lisa explained, we're at the sort of third stage here as we enter this next round and final round of engagement and moving into implementation. So it's my pleasure to provide an update to you. I'm going to remind everybody about what the key objectives were for the agricultural plan and how each objective did come with a deliverable attached to it, and then briefly describe the key components involved in the agricultural plan before going through each of the 22 recommendations, and then provide a minute or two to talk about some monitoring and evaluation indicators that we've provided as well. And then finally with next steps. So there were 4 key objectives as we embarked upon the Comox Valley Agricultural Plan. The first was to review key information that resulted in a lengthy background report. I believe it's over 100 pages, which just reflects how much work has already gone into the agricultural sector in the region, and indicating what an important sector it is for the Comox Valley. We also went and reevaluated the original agricultural plan, which is just over 20 years old now. And that was done through a series of meetings with staff and also the agricultural sector stakeholders. And we came up with an interim report there where we evaluated why and how some of the actions in that plan were implemented, and what the challenges were in implementing some of them. We also, as Lisa described, engaged with the agricultural community. We did several interviews. We did in-person focus group and workshop sessions, as well as online engagement as well. And we're moving into round 3 to provide the community with an opportunity for final comment, as well as an opportunity in the fall to review the final plan. And the draft agricultural plan provides these recommendations for the regional district to embark upon actions that will strengthen and enhance the local agricultural and food system. The key components of an agricultural plan, in really every agricultural plan, includes a vision statement, a series of goals or objectives, and then the recommendations. The recommendations are quite detailed. In the actual report that you have in front of you, there are specific descriptions of tasks associated with each recommendation. And then there's also a monitoring and evaluation framework and an implementation strategy, which staff and the community will embark upon in the next few months. I'm going to read out the vision statement. This vision statement was developed in conjunction through engagement with agricultural stakeholders in the Valley. So the vision statement that was developed for the agricultural plan is as follows. Agriculture is the heart of the Comox Valley. The history of the region, including during pre-colonial times when Indigenous food systems were abundant, will continue to influence this growing sector of the local economy today and into the future. With a mix of enterprises focused on a diversity of markets, the Valley's farms will continue to produce quality products. Farmers will be supported in their stewardship of land and water resources and become resilient to the impacts of climate change. The community will nurture a new generation of farmers with the capacity and resources to adapt and innovate so that a thriving agriculture and food system in the Comox Valley can continue to prosper. So with that vision statement in mind, we developed these 5 goals through which all of the recommendations are connected. The 5 goals are, firstly, to steward water resources to meet agricultural water needs. Second, to maintain agricultural land protection policies and support for producers. Third, to support actions that will grow the regional agri-food economy. Fourth, to collaborate towards climate change adaptation, mitigation, and emergency preparedness. And 5th, to strengthen the awareness of the Comox Valley agri-food sector. With each recommendation, we've also assigned a level of priority. There's 4 different levels. The first is ongoing, which includes continued or renewed support to achieve success over the next 10 years. High level priority involves urgent action for progress to be made or for other actions to be able to succeed, and these should be started within 1 to 2 years. Medium priority level actions are not necessarily critical for actions to move forward, but they are necessary and important, and they should be started within the next 3 to 5 years. And finally, the long-term actions are less important, but still necessary for improvements in the local agricultural system, and they should be started within 6 to 10 years. So I'm going to go through each of the 5 goals and their associated actions. Recommended actions. As I noted earlier, there's a lot of details associated with each of the recommendations that I'm not going to go through here, or else we'll be here for several hours. But in the document that you have in front of you, they provide specific tasks that would help to achieve each of these actions. So under goal 1, which is around water stewardship, there are 4 recommendations. The first is to support alternative water collection and storage practices within the agricultural community, and this is an ongoing recommendation. The second is to advocate for drainage upgrades and maintenance of existing agricultural ditches, which is also ongoing. The third is to encourage water stewardship and conservation practices, which is also ongoing. And lastly, to ensure that if a regional water service is created, that it will include agriculturally specific outreach and extension regarding water issues in the region, and that's given high priority. For goal number 2, and these are actions around planning and policy, there are 5 recommendations. The first is to maintain the agricultural coordinator position, and this is ongoing. The second is to reassess the role of the Agricultural Advisory Planning Committee, and this is a high priority. The third is to enhance compliance and enforcement for farmland protection, and that is also a high priority. The fourth is to update the regional growth strategy, official community plan, and zoning bylaw to be consistent with provincial policies, bylaws, and best practices, and that would be ongoing on an as-and-need basis. And fifth is to continue to manage and reduce conflicts between producers, recreational trail users, and wildlife, and that's also ongoing. The third goal around economic growth has 4 recommendations associated with it. The first is to seek opportunities for establishing a permanent location or multiple locations for farmers markets and local food retail, and that's given high priority. The second is to develop an agri-food market assessment and growth strategy for the Valley, and that's given medium priority. The third is to work to support succession planning and new entrants and ensuring that there's longevity in the sector, and that's a longer term action. And fourth is to support investment into services and infrastructure that will expand regional food processing, storage, and aggregation capacity, and that's an ongoing action. Under goal 4, we have 5 recommendations under climate change and emergencies. The first is to incorporate agriculture into the regional district's community climate action planning initiatives and strategies, and that's a high priority. The second is to support sustainable farming practices and the protection of ecosystem services on farms, and that's medium priority. The third is to communicate with and to involve agricultural stakeholders in emergency preparedness and planning, and that's high priority. Fourth is to continue to support wildfire risk reduction initiatives with agricultural stakeholders, and that's ongoing. And fifth is to increase solid waste management opportunities through recycling, composting, burning alternatives, and food waste reduction within the food system, and that's a medium priority. Lastly, goal 5 is around education and awareness. There are 4 recommendations associated with goal 5. The first is to develop a regional food security plan for the Comox Valley. That's a high priority action. Second is to develop and maintain online agricultural resources that are readily available to the public, and that's medium priority. Third is to co-host an annual Comox Valley Agri-Food Tour, and I heard that happened recently, which is excellent, and that's ongoing priority. And fourth is to identify and support opportunities for school-age children to learn about and to engage in the food and agriculture system, and that's a medium priority. I wanted to touch on the monitoring and evaluation piece. So we have developed 6 indicators which will help staff follow and track the progression of the agricultural plan as it becomes implemented. They are helpful indicators and they also are measurable, which are important. And they also can be separated into either performance or process related indicators. Ideally, we like to see agricultural plan monitoring and evaluation indicators reported on annually or biannually. The last section of the agricultural plan is a series of appendices. We spent quite a lot of time on this because we felt that they were really important supportive documentation to help inform how the agricultural plan does become implemented. So in addition to a glossary of definitions, we've also provided some specific recommendations for consideration around official community plan, zoning bylaw, and development permit guideline updates. We also have included an engagement summary report, which details all of the results from our engagement efforts. We've identified some funding opportunities, specifically with regards to some of the actions that may require external funding. And we also provided a scope of work for the agricultural coordinator or planner position. Elisa described some of these next steps. There will be a report to the CVRD board for information, and then this draft recommendation document will be posted online for public comment over the summer. We hope to also engage the public one more time in the fall, and at that point it will also be brought back to the EASC and board for approval. And that's it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Quite a lot of work, a lot of time went into this, and I'm so happy to see it. Looks very professional. In fact, I did notice that from some of the lines were lifted right off the page of the original plan. So not much changes in some regards, but yeah, my only question, I'll let the directors go, but or maybe, you know, we talk about the fact that the farming community is pretty distracted this time of year. So I'm just wondering if that reporting back, when's the last call? August 1st? You know, I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be better to relax that a little bit and take a breath and wait till everybody gets out of the fields by the end of September. So that's just a comment. Because you know what you know what it's like. Some farmers farm from the first light until dark. You know, it's just like it's like a marathon. So it might be better just take a breath and push that deadline out a little bit. Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks for all the work that's done into this by yourself and our staff. Yeah, it's pretty clear and concise. I think compared to the initial plan, I think there's actually more items that we control in this plan. The other one had a lot of things that we didn't control. And this one, I think, is much more focused on what the CVRD can do. So I like that. But then I start to miss the advocacy pieces, like what else we could do to encourage the province and others. But that's okay. To be honest, I land on preferring this approach. Just a few comments back. Under 1.4, I would just like to amend that to, I think you mean ensure that if a regional watershed service rather than water service. I think that the confusion there would be that we have a regional water service, it's the Comox Valley Water Service, and we did initiate a feasibility for a watershed service. Much of the thinking around that watershed service was based on forestry practices. I was one of the people who advocated for us to look into that. So I just want to have that clarity in the plan, unless we are talking about the regional water system and how we could bring water from Comox Lake to the agricultural area, which would be would be a lot of foresight, but would be very complicated. So that's one. The other one, if I recall, 2 years ago, I was asked a question if we wanted to include aquaculture, and we didn't, and I advocated for not including it. But I think since, and part of the rationale was there's a lot of specificity to land-based agriculture that is not shared to aquaculture, so I thought it would end up with a huge, messy kind of mosaic approach. However, reading this report, I think I might ask for staff to consider, to give thought to whether under the food security plan, whether it would be useful to include the aquaculture sector. Monitoring and evaluation looks really good. So I imagine we haven't talked at the broader board about our regional growth strategy dashboard, but I imagine if you can comment, I imagine those 6 indicators might be a good home for them, or they would get updated. And the other thing that was not addressed in this presentation is there was discussion as to whether we would need to create an agricultural service to host all this and our coordinator, but by the absence of mention of that, I'm assuming that staff is thinking that this could continue to live under RGS is where we currently have it. So just the last couple of questions / comments, and if you're able to address some of those, that'd be great.
Thanks. Through the chair, yes. So the water service piece, you're right, it's watershed service, watershed stewardship. So we can make that change. That's just clerical. With regards to your last question around the agricultural service, so that's something that we've started to sketch out, a bit of a framework of what an agricultural service might look like. And through this next step around determining how best to implement the agricultural plan is when staff is going to go back and with the community really look at what the capacity is to really flesh out that agricultural service idea, or to just leave it simply with the coordinator position for now.
Just to follow up for full clarity, the agricultural position is getting funded out of RGS or out of something else? Because if it's RGS, this is actually the full board. And if it's somewhere at EASC, it would just be the rural director. So I just can't remember.
I'm looking to Alana.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Ione. Through the chair to the directors, this plan in our agricultural work is undertaken in electoral area planning, function 503. The recommendation of Ione's on the regional food security, that's sort of where we drew that line between thinking about what would make sense from a regional perspective. And then if I could just add, we do have, and perhaps James could fill this in, on June 24th, a session with you. And one of the agenda items will be talking about some of your interests after hearing this presentation from Ione.
Thanks, Alana. That'll be the strategic planning for the Electoral Area Services Committee. I would also say with respect to the agricultural service, I'm really interested in what are the activities that would be most appropriate coming out of this work, and what would be those activities to take on. And then we'd want to look to our current authority, our current services, our current resources, and how much of those activities can we do within our current structures. And then if there's still areas that we cannot take on actions, then it may be that there is a service to be looked at. I just wouldn't want to suggest that a service is the first activity out of the gates. I'd like to understand what is the activities and then what is the means to achieve those activities. And it may be a service, but it may be that we have existing services, existing partnerships, other means of achieving those activities.
Yeah, before we go to Dr. Hardy, just a couple more comments on that. When we look at the housing service at the regional level, I think part of the drive is to create a vehicle that's appropriate for partnership as well, and for bringing outside money. And I would note that that wasn't lost on me. I'm sure staff is paying attention that the province has just issued a huge watershed security fund at a time where we're exploring a watershed service and considering issues around water in our agricultural areas. And as you say, the form derives from the function in a way. So, okay, so that's good to know that's in the works. And my last comment on all this. Yes, I forgot to just mention, I did note that partly where we were at 2-3 years ago in this conversation was around the food hub, which that was our starting point, where we realized we were very focused on one thing, but not looking at the broader picture. And this presents a broader picture. Food hub is nowhere in this plan. So that's actually noteworthy that, that this is not seen as a priority for our agricultural plan. What is, however, and that had been mentioned back even in 2018, is that permanent home for the farmers market is mentioned. And I'm really glad to see that in there. So that's it. If it lives under food security, then yeah, I think I like the idea of the food security might be more of a regional conversation, like Elena said, whereas the agricultural planning and the ditches and all that might be more rural. So everything makes sense in the plan. So I'm really happy. Yeah.
And we will have a chance to discuss this in a week's time. We'll do our strategic planning session as well. So Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I again follow Director Arbor in questions with regards to the agriculture service and how important that service is moving forward. I think a lot of these goals that have been indicated or identified, whether it's goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, support water stewardship, compliance and enforcement, support succession planning, and new entrants into the farming industry. To me, that agriculture service would help with all of these goals that we've identified, in my opinion. So I really do think that there is a strong need for the agriculture service. And I'm hopeful that through this process that we're undertaking, that'll become more clear moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And without beating things with a big stick, I think a farmer building would be a wonderful idea, especially if it was tied into not just the farmer's market, but also small batch processing, some cold storage, all the things that a building like that could afford. And I think to get that building, we would probably have to have an agricultural service because it apparently is not a sport or a recreation. But we can talk about that next Monday. Yeah, I think the water issue is another one that's ongoing. You may be aware that we put a resolution forward to UBCM regarding the province, the ministries in the province speaking with one voice around the Water Sustainability Act. We recently had a farm tour, and one of the farms we went to, they still haven't had their well licensed, and it's been what 2 or 3 years or something. So I mean it's not really happening in a timely fashion for farmers. And of course, with the summer approaching and the possibility of long periods without rain, it's absolutely essential that some mechanism be found for storage and retention of fresh water. And of course, we run up against the issues around the private forest lands and the watershed, et cetera, et cetera. But, we've been going around and around and around for over 15 years on this. So hopefully we can get some traction, whether it's through just having a dedicated staff person or an actual service that we can take to the bank and do some tangible things with the money. Anything else? Any other comments from staff? Well, once again, fabulous job. Thank you so much for all the work you put into this. It's really shining like a diamond right now. So
Thank you very much.
congratulations. Okay, so we're on the receipt part. Anybody opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that carries. And the recommendation. The only thing I won't put it in the recommendation, but the one thing I did make a comment on is the fact that we might have to stretch out some of these deadlines a little bit. The August 1st deadline may not be the best if we're dealing with the farming community. So just relax that a little bit. So it's moved and seconded. Director, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, just to follow up to your comment there, Chair, regarding the deadline, and I would also like to see that extension of the deadline past August towards the end of September, when folks get more of a chance to sit down and review it. So I concur with your comment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the recommendation. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Electrical vehicle charging update, a report for receipt. And here for introductions is our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monica Whitney Brown is our Planner 1 Long Range, and Monica will be introducing this staff report with a PowerPoint, and then supported by Robin Holm, Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, if needed. So Monica, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Through the CAO to the Chair and Directors, this report is on the topic of electric vehicle chargers. On April 8th, earlier this year, the Electoral Area Services Committee directed staff to bring back a report regarding the potential to start funding electric vehicle charging stations in rural areas. So the report before you provides an update on existing CVRD electric vehicle charging stations, directions for this technology, and advocacy recommendations. Next slide, please. So at this time, the CVRD has 12 public level 2 chargers throughout the Comox Valley, located, as you can see in the chart in blue there. The majority of these were installed through the Intergovernmental Mid-Island Electric Vehicle Charging Network. And these chargers provide really valuable charging services for folks throughout the region. However, with rapidly changing battery technology, BC Hydro's EV fast charging design and operational guidelines suggest that level 2 chargers are best suited for destination charging, and that direct current fast chargers are the new recommended public route charging, the new standard. And you can see in that image on screen, the difference in charge time between these two technologies is quite significant. the cost to install a DC fast charger is approximately $150,000 to $225,000 for a single charger. Next slide, please. So as you will note in the report in front of you, there are some challenges to consider for whether the CBRD should expand its ownership of public charging infrastructure. These include the fact that maintenance costs and asset management costs are beyond the initial funding contribution for the installation of existing chargers. Staff time spent repairing, troubleshooting, and responding to public complaints about those existing CBRD chargers are not provided for in any specific service. And as I kind of mentioned, evolving infrastructure technology, which means that older models like the level 2s may be obsolete in a relatively short time without a lot of clarity on the expense or route to decommissioning or recycling this infrastructure. And finally, as I mentioned, the cost of DC fast chargers, which is the new standard, is pretty significant. So fortunately, local governments are not the only or even most significant supplier of public EV charging infrastructure. The Clean BC Go Electric program through the province subsidizes EV charging infrastructure, and BC Hydro is really actively involved right now in funding public fast chargers. Fast chargers are also increasingly available through private industry, such as gas stations. And these groups are quite well positioned and resourced to roll out the additional fast chargers on a public basis compared to local government capacity. So staff have consulted the plug share map. You can see that on the screen in front of you here to identify gaps in the network. So you can see in red, I've put the little rectangles in area C between Courtney and Black Creek is kind of a gap in the network. And in area A between Union Bay and Courtney, another gap. So to support the development of the sort of best practice technology, DC fast chargers in these areas, the recommendation before you that staff have made is that the EASC consider sending a letter to BC Hydro and to the ministry responsible for Clean BC, which is the BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, to advocate for the prioritization of new DC fast chargers in these rural electoral areas. So at this time, I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for your time.
Excellent. And Director Arbor has a question.
Yep, thanks. That's a perfectly little report in a couple of months, so that's appreciated. We have to ask the province to start doing less on climate because we don't know how to spend our LG cap anymore. The two big changes that have happened in the last 2 months, if they've increased their funding to charging stations. And the second, which I was going to nix, is on the building retrofit for heat pumps and otherwise. They've just come out with a new program at 18,000, which makes our contribution kind of irrelevant. So we're going to ask the province to slow down so that we can spend our money, right? Just kidding. I really like the fact that you've gone to the length of just the full assessment of opportunities, and I think it's quite clear. Like Black Creek is a very noted gap in the charging infrastructure. I think if we were going to prioritize a partnership with BC Hydro or otherwise, locating something at the community hall or any other location in Black Creek would be, I think, the highest priority. And then in the south, yeah, I mean, you've highlighted it. There is the one at Buckley Bay, then you get into Courtney. That would be nice, but I think Black Creek is more on the need side. And Mount Washington is a funny one because it gets a dot, but it's really useless. It's like a level 2 in the snowbank in the winter. You have to fight to get into the snow and dig your way to the charging station. Okay, I'm painting a bad picture here, but it's really a poor station. And for people who have Nissan Leafs and stuff like that, like it's not, you can't count on it. Therefore, you don't go up the mountain. But yeah, it's great. I do have one last comment, which is I'm really curious. I hadn't heard about that. The 6 DC fast chargers for the fire hall in Hornby. So unless people have like, unless there's conversations happening about I would note that Gabriola beat us to the electric bus. They just got funding from the province to the, and on Hornby, ever since I got elected in 2018, we're talking about an electric bus. So unless that, I would want more information on the project to come back to the board, because I'd be curious to see if the plan is to help electrify with the school district, with the Hornby bus, so that those fast chargers are used. They've been looking for a home for the bus for a long time, and I'm not aware of conversation with the fire hall. Maybe I'm just out of the loop on Hornby, but 6 seems like a lot. So I definitely raise some questions for me. So hopefully that'll come back. And that's it for me. I would say for today, if we can see the project around Black Creek, that would be awesome.
Thanks very much. Any questions? Okay, I've got a ton of them. I'm just wondering about other jurisdictions, because, we're not operating in a bubble here. In fact, we're one of the last at the table on some of this technology. I do understand that one of the reasons why Chinese electric vehicles are so cheap is because they don't need to carry the huge amount of battery space, because there's chargers everywhere. So they don't need to have a huge 1-ton SUV that can go 700 clicks on a charge, because there's another charging station around the corner. But in other jurisdictions, in order to make it actually make a business case, do they charge for charging? Do they have a tap and go? It looks to us like it's sort of in its infancy, because it's pretty well all free, isn't it? You just pull in and take your turn and charge up. But I mean, to make it really viable, I mean, I don't see where anybody would. I mean, I know if I take my truck to Costco, it's $200 to fill up a gas tank. I mean, certainly they pay $25 or something to top up your battery. So I'm just wondering, what does the future look like, basically?
Through the CEO to the chair, I can speak a bit to jurisdictionally what other public chargers doing within the region. So as part of that Mid-Island electric vehicle network, where most of the majority of our publicly available chargers were funded, they also funded chargers for the city of Courtenay, the town of Comox, and the village of Cumberland. Those 3 municipalities at this time do charge is a funny word. They cost money to use the charger. So it ranges between $2 to $3 per kilowatt hour, I think. And so they're a top system for those ones. The CVRD ones are offered at this time free of charge.
But in order to put in a DC fast charger, that ain't going to add up to a hill of beans, is it? Obviously something like that would, because of the convenience involved, you would think that even regular service stations would be putting them in if they could, have a business case to turn a dollar.
Through the CEO to the chair, I can just make a quick comment to that effect. On page 4 of the report before you, I do note a couple, because you're absolutely right. This is starting to become more of a market for industry rather than just something that's provided by government. So we did note just a few for example, of private commercial properties that have recently invested in public DC fast chargers. So that's the Chevron in Comox, Drury Electric on Bevan Road.
There you go.
Pardon?
There you go. I said,
oh, yeah,
that's what I want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Horn Lake Petro-Canada and Chevron Courtenay are all now offering DC fast chargers. And we expect that to increase as the number of electric vehicles on the roads grow and as those battery sizes increase. And the BC Hydro programs are also resulting in a significant number of new fast chargers. Again, because the cost associated compared to the level 2, it's quite hard to bear for something like a local government. So we're starting to see much more active work from the province and from private industry into this market.
And of course, costs will eventually come down the more they produce, et cetera, et cetera. And I like the bit about the technology is moving so fast that some of the technologies are already obsolete or nearing obsolescence. So, you know, we got to keep awake to changes. So anything, any more comments from Monica? No. Then we're good to go. Thank you very much. So we're still on report. We did get first and second on report, didn't we? Okay, so anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none. And the recommendation. Move to second on the recommendation. And no more comments there. So anyone opposed to the recommendation? That also carries. Thank you very much. Okay, from electric charging stations to boat ramps. They're going to have electric boat ramp charging stations pretty soon, I guess. Move to second on receipt and looks like over to the marks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Mark Hart, excuse me, Mark Hart, our Parks Planner, will be introducing the staff report on the boat ramp user fees and the presentation. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you. Did I grab that? Through the chairs. So just a quick reminder, this committee asked staff to go back and look into the possibility of charging user fees at the Shingles Pit boat ramp back in October 2023. So this is the follow-up on that request. Currently, the CVRD manages 2 boat ramps, one at Shingles Pit where there are no fees currently charged, and one at Bilme Park where fees are charged. The request was to come up with user fees for Shingles Pit, but in the interest of being fair and consistent, staff are proposing a set of standard fees for all existing and future boat ramp user fees to be implemented through an amendment to the park regulations bylaw. The proposed fees are presented here. They're based largely on the fees currently being charged at Bilme Park. On the per use side, the annual pass represents a 40% increase to the existing fee charged at Bilme. The proposed fees are intended to capture about 70% of the operational cost of running a boat ramp. We don't have enough information to know whether these fees will achieve that goal, but CVRD staff are working on a user fee policy, which they plan to bring forward at some point in the near future. And staff recommend that propose that we could review these fees once that policy has been adopted. Thank you.
Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. It's always interesting when you talk about fees, go down rabbit holes and philosophies. For me, my instinct, yeah, it's not going to contribute to a capital plan. So that's replacement plan. That's number one. Number two, the fee per use is so low. And then the second is I was thinking from a climate lens, why don't we just say kayak, canoe, and non-motorized boats is 0 and motorized boats is 10? You know, try to rebalance that. And I would even have the question of how many people take the time to pay the $3 for their launching a kayak, you know. And it would be great if we got, I forgot if you made a comment on that, but if we got to like even 50% of operating cost, maybe that's for the future, but you know, it rolls off the tongue, say for Bilme, that users pay for 50% of the costs, operating costs, rather than 25%. Because it's, and then the last point I would make it when this comes back, actually there is a motion today, which well, actually I would recommend that adjustment for the kayaks and the canoes. But in the future, you haven't addressed commercial, because one of the things that's happened on Hornby is when we get gravel trucks or anything like that, because like, for example, BC Parks has a huge controversy on Hornby on their hands right now because they're proposing to bring 1,800 trucks of gravel. And so at some point you got to wonder whether they should just bring a barge and then use our boat ramp. Typically they use the little beach beside that, but I'm just wondering if we should also think about for commercial usage for Hornby and Denman, probably Hornby more than Denman, but just a question for the future. For today, I would propose that we increase the fee to 10 for motorized boats and 0 for non-motorized.
Interesting. Is a good concept. Director Hardy?
Yeah, thanks. If I understand, Mark, I think what you made mention of is again, developing a policy and to do that policy, there's still some work to be undertaken by staff. I am curious, I mean, town of Comox, the city of Courtney, they all have boat ramps, Union Bay as well. But again, I guess where I'm going with this is understanding what other communities are doing with regards to that use of the boat ramp and whether kayakers and non-motorized boats are being charged a fee or not. So I'd be curious to see that before I would say 0 for kayaking and canoe and non-motorized and increase the fee for single motorized boat. And I do understand that there are other the commercial use side of thing. I think it's something that we need to look at as well. So I agree with Daniel Arbor or Director Arbor on that. Thanks.
My question is that do they actually, is it one of those things you just drop it in the box? Is that, because it seems to me that there hasn't been much in the way of inflation with boat ramp costs for 25 years. So, I mean, it's always been $5, hasn't it? So, and you are paying for the parking piece too, right? That's what you're taking up. Once you're on the water, you're on the King's domain. Director?
Yeah, I guess the other question I would have for staff is, again, with regards to enforcement or monitoring as well, right? Is that all being taken into consideration when we start looking at those user fees? Because I know down at the Union Bay boat ramp, there are folks down there that do monitor to make sure that people are, if they're using the ramp, that they are paying that fee. So I'm just kind of curious if that would be included in the policy as well. Thanks.
Through the chair. So I'm not sure what will and won't be included in the user fee policy. But I can say, to your point about boats versus kayaks, in my research, I wasn't able to find any boat ramps that differentiate between the two. They charge on a per use basis. Bill Me is unique in that it does differentiate. I suspect that most kayakers aren't paying for boat ramps. The other piece is the enforcement. Currently, it's an honor system. I think an important consideration for the committee and for finance is the cost of administering the fees versus the benefit received from the fees. There is the possibility that we could adopt, staff may consider looking into the possibility of an e-transfer system, which would allow people more easily to pay the fees. You don't have to carry cash with you. But that's a possibility at this point. Thank you.
Mark, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to comment that I think one of the reasons that there has been a fee for kayaks and for canoes and stuff is that there's usually parking involved. So they're taking up space. And so I think that that's where that fee comes from, just to kind of clarify that.
Director Hardy?
Yeah, I'll just hold off. Thanks.
Director Arbor then.
Well, that's the other model is that we have to pay parking, I guess. You know, so rather than try to control the use of the actual boat ramp, just have but in the Hornby context, it's the parking, unless we do those improvements, doesn't really qualify. I understand for Bill Me, that might be different. All kinds of questions. What about if we just refer this and with more information coming back on Comox, Courtney, Union Bay pay schemes, just as information. So we have that as per Director Hardy's schedule. And then to the broader comment, it might be interesting to hear more about staff's thoughts on the payment scheme, because that's a question that's, I mean, for Lucy, it's like organization wide. to me, there should be one system for your dog license, and that includes the boat ramp, right? And in this modern day and age, people could have like a CVRD payment app or something that you just, because I hear a lot of people still come in, well, not everybody has the technology, but I think I would like that answer coming out from a broader organization-wide policy around how people make their payments. So maybe just defer it, because my personal opinion is I think it's a nice incentive. It's a small gesture to say, you're going on the water without spewing gas. Good for you. We'll support you with the $3. Yeah.
CAO have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. I just wonder if Mark or Mark could speak to any sort of urgency in terms of this recommendation here on the agenda today, and whether a referral to get a bit more information would be appropriate. And then I saw you shaking your head that no, there's no urgency, so a referral would be fine. I think in the broader context about a user fees policy and something that is applicable to the entire corporation, absolutely, we want to be consistent to provide those tools and services on a broad basis, and not be having individual experiences by service. So that is certainly in the works. I think it's part of the overarching fiscal stability strategy and work that Lucy is undertaking. And that said, this is some work that was requested earlier, and so it's a bit of an interim approach, but certainly message is well received. And then I think a referral would be fine for to gather a bit more information to give you that context.
Well, let's proceed with receipt. Oh, Director?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question, are we still in receipt? So.
Yeah, we are. So on receipt, and we have opposed. That carries. And Director, you want to refer it? Or?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, through the chair, there could be a possibility of referring it just to the work that Lucy's going to do with just user fees in general, and we could just envelope that all together if you like.
Should I ask Lucy to come to the table, our Chief Financial Officer?
Oh my gosh, opening a can of worms here. Because that's how you fish, right?
Thank you for that, to the CAO, to the chair, directors. Just a few comments on user fees and charges in overall. Because as our CAO has mentioned, it is one of those elements that'll become part of our fiscal sustainability framework, right? Like just developing a framework that can be used as a guide across our whole organization, so that we have this element of fairness and transparency across all of our fees. So that's going to come, and we'll build that out within the strategy and into next year. And in the meantime, of course, there's various fees that are going to be coming up as part of our budgets. So you may just want to be considering interim steps in that. You likely have a flavor in this report that there's still further additional information that we need, and that's not unusual. You start going down this road and you need information on your users, and we don't have that kind of information. We want to work further on our methods to collect these fees and understand whether or not it is feasible to actually put in systems to ensure that people are paying, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a bit of an approach, and I just wanted to make that clear, because from the perspective of the timing for us, when we're referring to the process that's going to come out of overall user fees, you're speaking about something that's likely not going to be in place until you get well into your next cycle. And as I'm saying, not unusual to see interim steps being able to be taken or maybe needed for some of your fees. You're already recognizing a couple of things here. These fees are very low. The fees are not consistent across the board. So I just encourage you maybe to potentially take steps along the way where you're walking in line with some of the principles that are there in such frameworks. And then, we will always be coming back and reviewing as we work on further information and establish that overall framework. Certainly defer to what EASC would like us to do, but I just leave you with those thoughts.
Director?
Yeah, sounds good. And I guess I would just, in terms of timeline, because we didn't say a timeline, but by the time we cut the ribbon for the new boat ramp on Hornby, so that gives you a year. It'd be nice to have a user fee that we can announce to the community when the new boat ramp is open.
That'll be the Daniel Arbor Memorial Boat Ramp. Endowment. Okay, so we have a motion to refer. Okay, so anyone opposed to that? That carried. And because we still have some of the crew here, we're gonna get a budget amendment for the Lazo Greenway multi-use pathway. It looks like an update. Report for receipt. Okay, it's first and seconded. And
Mr.
over
Chair,
to
yeah, over to Mark Harrison, our manager of parks.
Mark.
Thank you, James. Through the chair to the directors. Staff are seeking a budget amendment for the construction and project management services for the Lazo Greenway project. We did issue the construction tender in April of this year, and it closed in May 30th of this year. And we did receive 3 bids. The lowest bid did come in higher than what we projected the project to cost. It came in about $380,000 over our project estimates. Just to be clear that is a shared cost between the town of Comox and the Comox Valley Regional District, as it is a joint project. But to be able, what we're seeking is to be able to award the contract so that we can begin that construction work. The grant itself doesn't change, that amount doesn't change. The shared costs approximately are Comox, their costs will go up about 350,000. And for the regional district, it will go up about 125,000. So our ask is for 125,000 extra cost. Just to clarify, staff are working with the proponent on ways to look at lowering those costs. But we feel that we need to have a budget amendment now so that we can kind of proceed with the project, largely because the first phase of that project would be work to happen within the Lazo Marsh. And so we've got some environmental constraints there. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, Director Hardy has a question.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair to the staff. I guess the question I got is, it's a co-project between the town of Comox and the Comox Valley Regional District. I'm just again wondering about what that project is. The majority of the project within the town of Comox boundaries, or is it within the Area B CVRD boundaries? And I guess the question where I'm trying to go with is trying to understand, like, again, understanding that the CVRD, when we start looking at engineering, et cetera, has a standard, and then I guess the town of Comox has another type of standard. So is the project cost revolving around the activities within the town of Comox or within the CVRD? And hence the increase in costs?
Yeah, through the chair. So the project is 2.5 kilometers in length. And I think it's pretty close to being 50-50 in terms of what's in the town of Comox and what's in the electoral area. The town of Comox does have, I guess, higher engineering because they want to do paving, they want to put in irrigation, and more plantings and such like that at more of a municipal standard. So their project overall costs are higher than what is in the electoral areas. So that's why the breakdown here, the extra cost, it'd be more cost to the town of Comox. But we have an agreement with the town, and the consultant that's been doing all the design work has been very adept at making sure that all the costs are put to the appropriate piece of the pie. So that if it was involved extra work within the town of Comox, then it would be the town of Comox that would bear those costs.
Sounds exciting. It's going to be a great addition to the parks and trails, that's for sure. Okay, so we're still on receipt. Any opposed to receipt? Seeing none. That carries, and there's a recommendation attached. Did I get a seconder there? Okay, I saw the eyebrow briefly raised, so. Okay, so the recommendation as written, any discussion on that? Seeing none. All in favor? That carries, thank you. I'm just wondering if people are ready to break for a little lunch? Pardon? Working lunch, yeah. We'll do like 15, 20 minutes and then sit down. And then proceed to carry on through to the in-camera. Okay, so we'll take a little break. What time is it now? Yeah, it's 25 after, so 15 minutes. We'll come back to our table. We're back on the air. Number 9, Union Bay Fire Hall Budget Amendment. Moved and seconded. And over to staff for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Bruce Green, our Regional Rural Fire Chief, will be introducing this staff report and presenting the information. Bruce, over to you.
Always a pleasure, Bruce.
Thanks, James, through the CEO to the chair. In 2023, we had in the budget $100,000 to design the Merville Fire Hall, Union Bay Fire Hall. We went out to tender and the bids closed in April this year. And the bid per proponent, their bid was $378,000, which was significantly over the amount of budget we had allotted in 2023. And we had based that cost on the designs for the Merville and Mount Washington fire halls that we've been working on. I think because of the size of the Union Bay Fire Hall, an architect was involved, which increased the cost. So we're asking for a budget amendment to move $360,000 of the Growing Communities Fund into 2024 so we can hire the designer to get the fire hall going. It's because we need to get the accurate cost what the fire hall is going to cost for the electoral assent process we're hoping to take place this year. With that, I open it up for any questions.
And over to Director Robert.
Yeah, thanks. That sounds good. Just a little thing on the table. I think that the revised 460 is in 2024, not 2023, but that's okay. That's just a clerical thing, I think, to look after. And when would we expect to see an initial design, and that not only this, well, if the community sees it, the community will see it. So when if we're spending these monies on architectural drawings and such, when might we see something?
Our plan is to have designs ready for end of August so we can start the electoral assent process because we're going to need those defined budgets now. That'll be an architectural rental drawing, and then while we're going through the electoral assent process, they will finalize the plan, the documents, they get vendor header ready documents.
Okay, and are you thinking of doing an open house on the early design before presenting to ESC, or any public engagement opportunity around?
Well, we currently we are letting the public know what's going on. Like Chief Ham was at the Bay Days with the Presidential Fire Hall. We will be doing the electoral assent process procedure, bring the public up to date with that for whatever procedure we follow.
Through the assent process?
Yeah.
No early, okay, I guess I can live with that, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bruce. So on receipt, anyone opposed? That carries. There's a recommendation attached. Move second on the recommendation. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, anyone opposed? That carries unanimously. Graham Lake Water Tolls Bylaw Administrative Update. Did I skip one over? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Hornby Island Waste. And seconded. And over to staff.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Adam Idris is our solid waste analyst and will be supported by Vivian Shaw, our senior manager of Comox Strathcona Waste Services, in introducing this report. So Adam, I think over to you to start. Yeah, Adam. Go ahead, hit your button. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the Hornby Island recycling facility does control options. In February, just a quick background, the EAC had directed about $150,000 towards paving of the recycling facilities due to dust issues at the facility. And we moved with that direction and obtained some quotes from Taco Paving here in town. This what you see here is the Hornby Island recycling facility overhead look. So when we asked, we estimated roughly about 1,700 square meters being paved just for starting point and obtained unit rate cost for the paving as well as the mobilization cost separately. Paving here on the island is a little bit different on Hornby Island from Vancouver Island because there is ferries involved, and therefore we wanted the mobilization cost separately from the actual paving cost, so that we have an idea of what exactly where the costs lie. I'll come back to that slide later. So as you can see here on this map, that area that is outlined by the yellow polygon, that is what the current budget would allow us to pave, around 500 to 700 square meters, basically. The mobilization cost is quite high. It's about $45,000 flat rate for mobilization. And then the paving and then also the quick prep prior to paving will be about $132 per square meters. Now that is for a 2-inch base and 3-inch asphalt. So that's what this current budget would allow us to pave. And as you can see, that is a huge cost for mobilization. That's about 30% of the actual cost, roughly. And therefore, we went back to the drawing board and did some analysis on what kind of paving would be worthwhile from dust control point of view, and how much that would cost and how would we pay for it. So this is the different options that we have. On the left side, that's about 3,200 square meters. That would be what we think would be the best scenario of paving. Just that would give us dust control in that immediate area where there is operation. Does not include the access road, but also it would not be in the millions either. The second option we have there or area would be sort of a bare minimum, about 1,700 square meters. And that's the basis we found, we obtained the cost estimates on as well. And the top and the bottom right is where the 500 to 700 square meters would be for pavings. In terms of how we would pay for it, so just to take a step back, to pave that larger area, it would be closer to $500,000 as far as budget goes. And then to pave the 1,700 square meters would be a little bit less, about 300, I think it was, and so on. So these are the different scenarios of if we were to pay for this by way of increasing their acquisition cost to the residences in next year or so, then the cost would be, as you can see, for the 3,200 square meters, it would the acquisition cost would go to $633 per household, and it goes lesser and lesser as we go. For the current one that we have, the acquisition cost would stay at $339 per household. Alternatively, we can keep the acquisition cost as is and see when or at what year we would get to the budget we're looking for the different square meters of paving. The large area of the 3,200 square meters, we would get there closer to 2040. So that'd be in many years to build up the reserves. And as you can see, if it is for the 2,500 square meter paving, that would be in 2034, or if we want to pave about 1,500 square meters, that would be in 2028. Now, in terms of feedback from the community, we met with HIRA in April 2026, I believe. Vivian presented the analysis we've done to them. And their feedback was that we should, or they prefer to postpone the paving plans indefinitely and continue with the magnesium chloride applications that we've been doing. Now, the magnesium chloride application, as you can see here, we applied twice a year, and that would be about $5,000 to $6,000 budget for the year, as needed, and in coordination with the site operators. We can also increase the frequency of that. The more we apply, the more expensive it is, basically. Now, for next steps, we put forward some options and then recommendation to the AAC, to the committee. We recommend to postpone this paving until we build up the reserves for it. This is assuming that there is no appetite to increase the requisition cost, but we'll hear from the directors on how we would like to proceed.
Just thinking, that's a lot of money to pave. I think Director Arbor has a comment.
Yeah, thanks. I got the same feedback from the committee. I don't think they were too excited about the paving idea. I am. I think that long term, I think people know all the dust issues and the site management issues from the current mode. But I definitely saw strong disagreement from the highway committee on that. So in the end, I think the staff recommendation is kind of perfect. We can continue to build reserves, kick it down the road. And as long as nothing is triggered by WorkSafe BC around dust and stuff like that, which I think is an issue, but I realize that putting down the chloride can help a bit for a certain period of time, but I've also been there on windy and dusty days. It's not great. But yeah, we'll just kick it down the road and keep building reserves, and I support the staff recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I am curious. I know Wireless Road in Comox runs into some similar issues with a dirt road. So this idea with regards to our requisition to ideally generate some revenues where you can turn around and pay the road down the road is something that's interesting from an Area B perspective. But again, going back to my experience with constituents over on Wireless Road is the chloride treatment. And with climate change going the way it is, that I know Modi applies the same solution, I think, to Wireless Road, and they're still running into problems with a lot of dust. And it's because in the mornings or during the evening, that dampness that comes into the air that would normally be attracted to that chloride and help disperse with the dust. With climate change, the evenings are still a lot more drier than they used to be. So I guess that's the concern or comment that I would have with regards to the chloride treatment is with climate change, there appears to be an issue with regards to that chloride treatment maybe not being as great as it used to was. So just a comment that I share there with regards to that particular treatment. Thanks.
Okay, no more discussion on that one. We'll call the question on the receipt of the report. Anybody opposed? That carries. The recommendation is moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Seeing nothing, call the question. Anybody opposed? That carries. Now we move on to Graham Lake Tolls Bylaw Administrative Update for receipt.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Kaylee Lemert, engineering analyst, will be introducing the staff report, and Mark Rutten, general manager of engineering services, will be assisting as needed. So Kaylee, over to you.
Thank you through the CAO to the chair and directors. This is just a quick housekeeping update of the Graham Lake Water Local Service Areas Water Tolls bylaw. We are proposing to remove specific references to the former improvement district and references to specific years, which is typical of improvement district bylaws. We'll be completing a more substantial update to all water local service area bylaws between the end of this year and early 2025 to achieve consistency within all service areas. That's all for me, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Short and sweet. Well, that was so short and sweet that everybody's just happy as a clam, and we're gonna move right on to receipt a report. All in favor? See, gotcha. Oh, that means there's 2 opposed. And move the recommendation. And second on the recommendation. No further discussion, call a question. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? That carries. Staying with Graham Lake and Denman Island Water Service merger. For receipt. Back over to staff.
Yeah, and again, back over to Kaylee for this probably slightly more complex staff report for introduction. Kaylee.
Thank you through the CAO to the chair and directors. Denman Island Water Local Service Area has been connected to and purchases water from Graham Lake Water Local Service Area since 2012. Now that both service areas are owned and operated by CVRD, the sole remaining hurdle to amalgamation of the services is accounting for the reserve and equity between the services. Upon review, we estimate the reserve and equity to be around $1,000 per parcel, 24,000 total, which accounts for equitable contributions to Graham Lake's reserves since 2018, and the fact that water meters are installed in Denman Island Water Local Service Area, but not in Graham Lake Water Local Service Area. Given the extreme costs facing both services and significant grants dedicated to the water treatment project, staff are requesting to reallocate a portion of the recently approved $300,000 community work funds to facilitate the merger of the service areas. If the grant funding is not dedicated in this way, an additional parcel tax would be required, causing an additional financial stress and could jeopardize support for the long-term borrowing required for the treatment upgrades. Should the ESC support this approach and dedication, staff will bring forward a bylaw to merge the service areas, which could be authorized with consent from the Electoral Area Director. That's all for me, but happy to answer any questions.
What's happening? Not working?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm quite willing to start the bylaw process, but we have a public engagement session coming June 20th, I think, or something like that. And I don't know if I gapped. At the time I had asked for like an all department approach. I don't think we're doing that anymore, where we're going to talk about the Cross Island Trail and Graham Lake and all that. I think now is just a session for Graham Lake on June 20th. Is that correct?
Bruce Green might be there, but I'll have to confirm.
Okay. So I just asked that topic be covered in the presentation on June 20th, that we're going through these bylaws, and I think I'm not going to get up to speed on what it might mean to individual households, that merger. On the bigger picture, I imagine for the long term, it generates equitability in bringing the two services together. But I am aware, and I've been told before, that there's a long history in who paid for what in those two systems. And so I just want to know that as we move through that bylaw process, and starting with June 20th, that we're very transparent and proactively communicating to the community that we're engaged in that bylaw process, so that if there's voices that want to come forward with their concerns on that, they're not caught by surprise that we're doing this.
Stop using my outside voice. There you go. Back on the air. SCTV is back on the air. Okay, so any other discussion on that? Still on receipt? No questions? On receipt, anyone opposed? And the recommendation attached. Moving second on the recommendation. Any other discussion on that? So call question, anybody opposed? And that carries. Now, 13, Comox Strathcona Waste Management Plan Presentation. Verbal update. Sarah's here.
Yes, Sarah Willie, will be presenting an update on the Comox Strathcona Waste Management Solid Waste Management Plan renewal process, renewal process. One of the two. And you're all familiar with that through the Solid Waste Management Board, of course, but this is Sarah's opportunity to present to not just the Electoral Area Services Committee, but also to municipal councils and Strathcona Regional District. And Sarah, I'm sure that'll be part of your presentation, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you through the CAO to the chair. Yes, as James mentioned, I've been on a bit of a roadshow, so reaching to do in-person presentations to each of the municipal councils. I'll also be presenting to Strathcona's EASC or EASC, and intentions to reach out to Hira and Dira as well, as they are an important part of the system. And we've completed, I think, 5 or 6 of them so far, and it's been going well. So I don't think I need to tell you guys about how Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service is created, but that's certainly one of the high-level things that many of the municipal councillors are not necessarily as familiar with. So we've been introducing them to that concept. And then when it comes to the solid waste management plan, what we've been emphasizing is really just that this is a moment in time to look long-term and to be able to lift our heads up from the day-to-day and make plans for the future so that we're not caught on the back foot when it comes to some of the major investments that the service needs to make, such as disposal options and achieving those targets that the province sets for us. So providing that statistic of looking at where the tip fees were around 2020 and how low they were, or sorry, around 2000, how low they were and how, they needed to come up in order to support some of the considerable capital assets that we needed to invest in over the last 25 years, 24 years. And then also just to reference that, although we have achieved, great strides in terms of maintaining our generation of waste, we do continue to increase the overall quantity of materials that we need to manage. And that's, when you add up all the packaging and recycling and all the organics and food waste and yard waste, the volume of materials we're managing is higher year over year. So the plan itself is a requirement of the Ministry of Environment, and they do ask us to look at these every 10 years. Every 5 years, we do a review. Our last plan was 2012, approved in 2013, and we've been moving forward and making a lot of headway within that plan. A big part of that was, as I mentioned, our disposal options. So the closure of Campbell River landfill, Pigeon Lake landfill, the construction and authorization of the existing engineered landfill has been part of that last 10-year plan, as well as our leachate management, our significant efforts in landfill gas capture and destruction, all of those pieces. The organics, of course, was another big one. So the completion of the organics transfer station and composting facility and expansion to allow for urban residents to participate in that. Those are big milestones that we've achieved in our last plan, to give you some context for where this one's going. But we do see those increases in population growth, changes in expectations from the population as people are moving into the community, and that, these are long-term problems that, don't have quick solutions, as those of you who've been on this committee for a while understand well. So our goal is to produce less garbage. We're about halfway, or sorry, midpoint of the province in terms of our 551 kilograms per person. We're striving for 350. That's the provincial target. And there are some jurisdictions that are achieving, lower per capita generation rates than we are. Our neighbors to the south, Nanaimo, Cowichan, occasionally Capital. And that, we look to them to see where some of the initiatives that they've moved forward with might be in our future. Overall, we're dealing with about 65,000 tons a year in waste, and then, of course, a significant amount of recyclables as well. We're undertaking a greenhouse gas emission inventory. We've got I'd say we're about 75–80% of the way there. So we should be able to bring that forward to the board soon. This data is from our previous compilations, and of course comes before we close the Campbell River landfill. So there'll be significant changes to the greenhouse gas emissions subsequent to that. So where we're seeing our greatest emission generation, of course, is from our landfills and from the decomposing material that's going into those landfills. What I will say from review of the draft emissions inventory is that messaging stays the same. We've taken a more detailed and drilled down approach to looking at generation from our on-site equipment, as well as our transportation emissions from moving waste and recyclables around the region. And those transportation and on-site equipment are still very small compared to our landfill emissions. So that will likely continue to be our area of focus. In terms of the evolution of waste management in Comox Strathcona, looking back, I think through the different solid waste management plans, what I really see is it's incremental. These are things that have taken a while, and we can't necessarily expect that we're going to solve all these problems tomorrow. So, we've transitioned significantly within this jurisdiction from introduction of curbside to the municipalities in the 2000s, introduction of extended producer responsibility through the 2010s, and significant opportunities for additional recycling beyond Blue Box. But there was a lot of closure requirements and changes to landfill regulations that occurred both in the mid-90s and again with the change to the landfill criteria in 2016. And that was really a big impetus for the changes that happened for us for the last 10 years. One thing we've been reviewing with the municipalities is that sphere of influence, and really raising the profile of some of the areas that they can help us and support us in our goals. And we're happy to see that, some of the larger governments with a bit more capacity, there's staff that are not solid waste staff that we do need to be part of this conversation, are perking up as we bring this to their attention. And I think we're going to be able to make some strides there in terms of, building permits. Also, the IC9 and multifamily will require some assistance. So I think it's been a great exercise in raising the profile of this project beyond the solid waste staff at the municipal level. In terms of our renewal process and where we are, we're about halfway through. We've initiated the process, set the plan direction. We began this back in 2022, and we're now evaluating options, and we'll be looking forward to preparing and adopting the plan in 2025-26. So looking backwards, in 2022, our initiation, we got the RSWAC is what our acronym. I know you guys have a lot of acronyms in your life, but here's another one for you. The Regional Solid Waste Advisory Committee. So that's made up of 15 members of the public, as well as our technical members, which are municipal staff. And then we have 2 elected officials, which are our 2 board chairs for the waste board. And each of the First Nations in our community, so there's 10 that have communities that, rely upon facilities or services that Comox Strathcona Waste Management runs. And so we invited each of those to have a member on our committee as well. And that didn't need to be a staff member or an elected member. It could just be a member of the community. And then we did a survey as well, which was fairly well received. We had about 1,100 responses asking people for what their current status in terms of the facilities and services that they had for waste management and how satisfied they were with those. So summarizing step one for rural responses, and this does include area D because we lump you guys together. This is contrasting depots with curbside services. So the question put to them was, how willing and able are you to take the following actions to increase your waste diversion? And we can see that participation in curbside did receive stronger willingness than participation in depots, with the caveat that, you know, we did highlight that taking items to the recycling depot and willing to make multiple trips if needed to divert as much as possible. So I think that that's fair to highlight that that it was a bit of an extended depot trip and not a single depot trip. But I think this is a conversation we've been having for a while, and we know that there are proponents on both sides of that argument. Oh, apologies that this didn't save properly. My apologies. There's 6 goals here and 8 guiding principles. They are available on our Engage Comox Valley webpage, and we've been updating that as we move through this project. So these were the goals and guiding principles that we took to the community last summer, and we were able to run these by the community and also did an online survey to understand what their support was. So we were in a number of different communities across the service area to capture the residents from the electoral areas of the Comox Valley. It's a bit complex because certainly they travel around a bit more, but you know, we did have events in Canada, in Courtney, Comox Nautical Days, Denman Farmers Market, Black Creek Fall Fair, Hornby Island Fall Fair, and the Comox Valley Home Show as well. So we did have a number of events that residents could come and contribute to the conversation in and see those goals and guiding principles and provide their feedback on that. And of course, we had our landfill open house in July as well, which was our first time doing that. So I've summarized some of the comments, specifically the Black Creek event, because it was exclusively within the rural area, and also just pulled out some of the very obviously rural comments that came up in some of those urban events. So I think consistent with what we've heard before, looking for curbside, desire for increased recycling options, curbside, potentially more depots, more bins or drop-off locations. They want a referendum. What they want to understand what the plan for handling increased waste is. One comment around construction waste and challenges on sorting on site. The cost of private haulers increasing, and looking for transparency around better recycling solutions. The related feedback from some of the other events, fairly consistent. One mentioned seniors unable to drive, someone looking for a revote again, the cost of private pickup, equitable services to all part of the region, contrasting urban versus rural, and the increase in yard and waste, especially in the spring and the fall, in Area B, Union Bay. And yeah, collection services again in rural areas. So certainly fairly consistent from those who stopped by and shared their experience and opinions with our engagement consultant. So looking forward, step 3, this summer we have 5 different engagements planned in the rural areas. So through the mid-July period there, we've planned to have a bring your junk in your trunk event. So it's like a little mobile garage sale, and as well an opportunity to win a yard of compost for those coming to participate. So recognizing that summer is a busy time for folks, trying to find a few ways to make this event a little bit more appealing and also appeal to the types of activities that we're going to be discussing in terms of diversion waste management. So our main goal with hosting these events is really to understand what diversion, how the community feels they can improve diversion for rural residents and in what form that takes. So we're trying not to come forward with a preferred solution at this time, because we understand that there are people who have different opinions. But we did take an opportunity to, Vivian and I go with Doug DeMarzo to review some potential locations if a depot or many depots were considered as a preferred solution to curbside or rural roadside, what that might look like, and if there were any potential synergies with property that's currently owned or used by the CBRD. Again, to kind of build on some of the synergies in those small communities. So that's one area that we're considering and are prepared to speak to at a high level during these consultation sessions. And then again, just to highlight that we'll have a landfill tour in September 14th, that's a Saturday. And then we'll have an open house in Campbell River of the organics facility. And that's our first time opening that facility up to the public. So we're hopeful that that will be well attended and then, of course, longer term, in terms of the strategies and options that we're looking at, this period right now is really to have very targeted stakeholder engagement on some of the bigger issues that we see that will come forward through the strategies that we're pulling together for the board. So we have a series of technical memos that we're also making our way through advisory and the board, which you'll continue to see next week. And then in the fall, it'll be a summary of all of those strategies that we'll be considering. So we want to have the feedback from the community on those strategies to bring to the board for their decision in terms of how to approach this rural diversion option. Thank you. If you have any questions, happy to help.
Well, here we go around again. That's the circular economy for you. Same old questions. Director?
Yeah, thanks for the comprehensive presentation, and I think this committee has grown quite familiar, as Dr. Grieve said, over the years around, well, we're sort of stalled in the rural areas, really. There's been very little change. There's been the loss of a couple of depots at one point. So for the rural areas of the Comox Valley, and then we misread, well, Dr. Hardy wasn't here, but Dr. Grieve, myself, and Amir misread the population with the AAP in 2019, I guess, or 2020, forget when it was.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate. Just I think a referendum might have been better, but I also learned along the process, and this is where I think that solid waste management plan is important, because a bit like the liquid waste management, it is a way to really chart a course that is both you get public feedback, but you also get expert feedback and stakeholder feedback. And I know that one of the options as directors, and maybe Director Hardy doesn't know that because he's in here too, but one of the options I learned a couple of years ago is, because it's solid waste management, directors can actually just declare that you will have curbside collection. Like, there's actually an option for us to simply sign a letter and impose it. So I'm holding off on that. I know there's a lot of people in Union Bay that would like to see curbside collection. But there's also always a vocal group that doesn't. And then at the time, we also thought we had good partners with some of the private garbage pickup people, but that also backfired. So at some point, something has to give. I think the information that would be important for me, if I was, say, at the end of my political career, perhaps, because when you do stuff like that, you do things. But the information that would be interesting to know that I don't think we assembled at the time is, what is the current landfill cost? And so say that you took Union Bay, right? And they pay X amount in land, and we got the landfill space and all that. And if we had curbside, we know that would reduce and restream into recycling. So there's a savings there. And for the $200 or so that people would pay per year. But I think that it's not that it was bad, it was actually quite good, but I think we need to think about refining that value proposition to people. And I think it's untenable for the rural areas where we have density to not have something that we know works. And it's fine if we explore a recycling depot, like we have the recycling depot on Hornby and Denman. But the other thing I've learned from Hornby and Denman is like a fully functioning recycling depot is really expensive. Like Hornby Islanders are paying through the teeth for that. And I have raised that in the past during the COVID era, whether we should move to what would be the cost of moving to collection, which in their case doesn't work because there's 2 ferries and all that. So it's not as good of a proposition, but for Union Bay, it'd be good to see the comparison of operating a fully functioning recycling depot versus doing curbside. And I think we did some of that work. So anyways, I'm starting to rant a little bit, but it's partly because I'm disappointed that the rural areas seem to just live in the 20th century and we're just not progressing. And there's a part of me that thinks like as a service area, maybe one possible outcome of solid waste management plan is, you know, areas that have a certain density must have a curbside collection or alternate system that works. Because we're paying for it. We're paying for it environmentally. We're paying for it in landfill costs. Dr. Grieve always gives a better picture on that, but he's been giving that picture for 15 years, and many of our residents still don't believe it. They still think that it's fair somehow that those who do the right thing pay $1,000 or $1,500 a year to get their garbage picked up, and those who throw all their recyclables in the garbage bag and goes to the dump, you know, pay their $10. It's just wrong. You know, it's just, we don't have a functioning system in the rural areas for solid waste. Thanks. On that cheerful note.
Well, my question would be around using the existing bylaws we have already. I think I brought this up, the fact that it's actually unlawful to for the haulers to dispose of stuff that has is recyclable and there's market for it already. So, I mean, how do we get if people won't trust a public system, and they, you know, we heard all the hue and cry about, you know, that we're crimping free enterprise and all this. Well, you know, how do we get the existing haulers to pick up recycling and garbage rather than, you know, I mean, everything in those mysterious black bags, we don't know what's in there, organics and of course, recycling as well. So is there anything we can do just to compel the private sector to behave properly?
If I can, I'll respond to that. Director Grieve, we're bringing to the CSWM board at the next meeting 3 different bylaw considerations. They're quite complex policy approaches that have been undertaken by the Regional District of Nanaimo. And one of those is mandatory source separation that works to integrate with hauler licensing to incentivize the private sector to support that. So perhaps that question will be answered next week for you.
And of course, RDN and the other CVRD are exemplary in their diversion, always have been. And why are we the laggards? I mean, it seems to me that people think they want to do the right thing, but yeah, it's a tough one. Like you say, you're up against an avalanche of opposition. Sometimes it makes no sense, and it only takes what, 20% failure rate? It's 10. Yeah, so we were what, 17, I think, when we did the last AAP. 17%, I think.
Yeah, each of the regions was slightly
People
different.
came down here with their paper to make sure that we didn't do something as radical as recycling. Oh well, is what it is. Any other questions, Sarah? Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We're on receipt, and that's all there is, just a oral update. So on receipt, anybody who's not in favor? And that carries. Now, we got the UBCM Asset Management Program grant application. We like grants. And there's Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lucy Wachar, our Chief Financial Officer, will be introducing the staff report, and we can assist with any questions. So, Lucy.
Thank you through the CAO, to the chair, to the directors, just really quick. Little few comments from me on this one. This is I think you're all familiar with this particular program through UBCM. And as we keep advancing our asset management program here at the CBRD, we just tried to take every opportunity to be able to pick up some grant dollars in this way. This program has 2 intakes a year. So where we see the opportunity for applicable items, we are putting in our application. So we submitted for May, and as it states in your report, this is related to the assessments that are planned for this year at multiple community halls. This has already been submitted. The date was in May, and we have a request here, recommendation here for the board to just provide that resolution because this grant requires it. Thank you. We're available for any questions.
Driver?
Yeah, well, I'm against recycling and I'm against asset management, so. No, just kidding.
Darn right.
Happy to pass a motion, propose a motion.
So do I read this correctly? It's $25,000 per haul, right? Didn't think so. Any other comments? $25,000. You could buy a decent 10-year-old car for that. No other discussion, no wisecracks, please. It's serious business. So on receipt, call the question. All in favor? That carries. And seconded. So on the recommendation, anybody opposed? Let the good times roll. Thank you very much. Now, I'd like a motion to adjourn back to the